Gentlemen, good morning. I have the honor and I'm very pleased to welcome you at this annual conference of Age Platform Europe 2025 on intergenerational solidarity in Europe, a multi-stakeholder meeting. A warm welcome to all of you here in this room, but also to those of you who are following us online, because this is a hybrid conference. Of course, a very warm welcome to our two distinguished speakers who will actually open the conference. Actually, Age Platform Europe is the largest European network of advocacy organizations, often representing older people. And I would say in line with our long-standing advocacy to promote age equality, but also to recognize the potential of older people and aging in society. We would like today to address actually one of the, I would say, very interesting new elements on the European agenda, which is the intergenerational fairness. To give you a short context of this, you all know that actually for the first time ever, actually we do have a dedicated commissioner responsible actually for intergenerational fairness, and I think that marks a key moment for us as older people, but also other population and age groups, because it's a new, interesting approach to policy making. We are also having an upcoming strategy on intergenerational fairness. We will discuss this, I think, in length today. But I would say equally important, there is as well a development at the broader international level. As you know, in April, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted actually by unanimity a resolution which sets a working group to start the elaboration of a legally binding instrument, a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older People. And although this is a broader global development, but I think it gives also an additional it changes the dynamic. It also has relevance for policy making on aging here in the European Union. So I think this is important to keep this in mind as well when we will be discussing intergenerational solidarity today. We will have very different and I would say extremely rich in terms of profile speakers representing, of course, different levels: local, national, regional, international. We will have academics, we will have civil society, we will have institutions, the representation of member states. So all in all, thank you to all of you who have actually accepted the invitation to our conference. We will have two panels. The first one actually will explore the shared interest and challenges across generations. And then we'll have a second panel, which will more specifically look at how we can actually strengthen cooperation, solidarity between generations, and how this can actually help to tackle ageism. Also, an important, I would say, innovation for our conference is that this year, in addition to our guest speakers, we will also give the floor to a number of people, both young and old, whom actually we have invited to present their own, I would say, testimonies, to share personal perspectives on what intergenerational solidarity means to them. So these testimonials will be actually presented in the form of short videos, which we will be actually showing throughout the whole day. So we are very deeply grateful for these meaningful, I would say, contributions, which I'm sure will bring nuances, but also illustrations to our discussion. Before we start, very quick two housekeeping rules. First of all, we do have interpretation: English channel 1, French channel 2, Italian channel 3. The conference will last until 1 p.m. We will have also a 30-minute break around 10:30. And after the conference, there will be actually lunch served in the hotel. Also, you know it, I think in this room, we don't maybe need that much to insist on this, but actually it's a tradition of the events that we organize at AGE, when we actually insist on the importance to that we use all that we should not use any ageist communication, language, words. We do have actually our guidelines as Age Platform Europe, and actually on how to promote inclusiveness. When we speak about age, we know that words have the power. Just to take this example, I know it changes between different languages, but in English, when we use the term elderly, there is actually a negative connotation. This is very much close to frailty, to vulnerability. This is why we promote more inclusive language, which actually avoids prejudices, stereotypes, or even discrimination. Again, I'm sure that here in the room we all understand this, but it's a part of, as I said, our tradition, and it's something that we want to insist. So now, moving toward to the program, I'm very honored to have with us two distinguished panelists. First, let me to introduce Madam Pia Arenkilde. You are Director General at the European Commission, Director General Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, in short, DG EAC. And actually, it's true that your DG, together with the Joint Research Center, which is a European policy lab, let's call it like this, you two play a very key role in the development of this intergenerational fairness strategy, which is on the way, supporting Commissioner Glenn Micallef's work. And you will have, I know, a short message from Commissioner, as well as from Executive Vice President Roxana Minzatu, who was supposed to actually send a message recorded. It was not possible because of the very busy agenda, but we've been in contact actually with Executive Vice President. It's a very interesting exchange that we have, and I'm sure that actually this will be also a sort of a connection to what we have already discussed. So, of course, you will have then the space to present us the ambition behind this upcoming strategy. And then secondly, I also have a pleasure to introduce Dr. Gemma Kearney. You are Associate Professor of Social Policy and Aging, School of Social Sciences, Education and Social Work at the Queen's University in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Dr. Kearney, you are an expert on social policy and aging, and you will you will bring us maybe some nuances about concepts when we speak about intergenerational solidarity, fairness. Is it exactly the same thing, or maybe there are some differences? And of course, what are, from the perspective of policy making, how we should approach this discussion. So without taking more time, Madam Arenkilde, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, dear Secretary General Kucharczyk. I hope I pronounce it not too badly. Dear Dr. Kearney and ladies and gentlemen, I'll try to be very mindful of the words that I use. Indeed, words matters. I'm definitely the first to sign up to this. Thank you first and foremost for inviting me to address you here today, to address and take part in the Age Platforms Europe's 2025 annual conference on intergenerational solidarity. Unfortunately, as was mentioned, our Executive Vice President Minzatu and our Commissioner Glenn Micallef, who, as was just mentioned, is indeed leading the Commission's work on intergenerational fairness, could not join us here today. They send you their warm regards, and indeed they are very eager to hear about the outcomes of today's conference. And of course, I'm sure we'll be engaging with you on a later occasion. So my message here today is really one of engagement. We're very keen to keep engaging with you. I'll mention how we're already doing so in the ongoing work for the strategy for intergenerational fairness, which is, as Maciej mentioned, taking shape. So the starting point is, of course, that Europe is undergoing profound demographic change, with more generations living than ever before, living and working side by side. It's no secret to you, our population is aging while our working population shrinks. And on the basis of current trends, our EU labor force will shrink by more than 20% by 2070. That can seem a long way away, but it's happening as we speak. And this would almost be equivalent to 43 million fewer people in the labor force than we have today. It makes you think. And it will have, of course, significant impact on our economies, on our welfare, on our health systems, on our housing and infrastructure needs. And Europeans are very conscious of this. According to a 2023 Eurobarometer survey, 7 out of 10 Europeans agree that demographic trends put the EU's long-term economic prosperity and competitiveness at risk. The shrinking working age population underlines the need to activate all available talent, and fortunately we have a lot, including clearly here in this room, to continue investing in skills across all generations. And we need to empower younger generations to develop their skills and facilitate also their access to the labor market and to affordable housing. All these policies are, of course, linked. And alongside this, we need to work to sustain the welfare of older generations through reforms combined with the appropriate labor market and workplace policies. The Union of Skills, an initiative that the Commission put forward under the leadership precisely of Executive Vice President Micallef on the 5th of March, proposes concrete actions to address the challenges of demographic change that risks undermining Europe's competitiveness. It targets Europeans of all ages, from children at school to those reaching retirement. Skills, which are foundational for more advanced skills. We will pilot a basic skills support scheme to reduce underachievement among pupils across the EU by addressing basic skills deficiencies earlier and faster. And secondly, we will seek to provide lifelong opportunities for adults to regularly upskill and reskill, for example, through our European skills academies, to align skill sets with industry needs in specific key sectors. Thirdly, we will seek to help the free movement of workers to ensure that skills can circulate freely across our European Union. And here, introducing the European degree, as we call it, is a pivotal step to ensure that full circulation of knowledge and of skills can happen across Europe. And then finally, as a key pillar of this Union of Skills that we wish to build, working to attract, develop, and retain talent to fuel Europe's innovation, its growth, its competitiveness. So the Union of Skills provides and promotes a unified approach, and it will allow us to keep Europe competitive and fair. And this is where I come on to the strategy on intergenerational fairness, because we do want to go further and investigate the solutions that intergenerational solidarity can bring. Older generations with their experience and stability, and younger generation with their innovation and adaptability have important roles to play to sustain a competitive and fair Europe. And intergenerational solidarity is essential for building a strong, resilient, and inclusive Europe. And this is something that our President, Ursula von der Leyen, has given very high priority when she designated Commissioner Glenn Micallef as the first ever commissioner responsible for intergenerational fairness. And she entrusted him with working out a strategy on this very issue, which the Commission is expected to adopt in the first half of 2026. And you, as stakeholders, are crucial to the successful design of this strategy. And that's why we've been holding consultations with a diverse range of stakeholders before putting pen to paper, taking an inclusive and participatory approach to the design of this strategy. And the input that we have already received has been hugely valuable as we move to the next phase of what is a very, let's say, innovative project of strategy co-creation. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to build a Europe that is fair to all generations, present and future, and we want to create trust, ensure social cohesion, and foster a sense of unity across society. So the strategy will be wide-ranging, touching on policy areas from ensuring welfare and long-term care, access to housing, as I already mentioned, and social mobility, to tackling climate change and strengthening the EU's sustainable, there it is again, competitiveness. Because we need to sustain, of course, the economy for the present and the future generations, which is why it's so central to this Commission's agenda. And we want it to function as a platform that other commissioners can use to deploy flagship projects, marking a really new mindset for policymaking and working to create a unifying framework for solutions that mutually benefit different generations across a range of policy areas. Housing is a very good example of this intergenerational and cross-generational dimension, because many young people, as you know, struggle with access to affordable housing, while many elderly people struggle with loneliness in their dwellings. And addressing socioeconomic inequalities across generations will be an important area of work. And we will work to help support community building, developing support systems that bridge generational divides, ensuring a fair transition in areas like labor, wages, and pensions, to protect Europe's unique social model and guarantee sustainability. And allow me to use a few more words on the process of bringing this new strategy to life, because the strategy is indeed designed applying a participatory and evidence-based approach. In January, we launched the first scoping phase. Our colleagues in the Joint Research Center that we are working very closely with were mentioned, and they are leading this phase. We suggested a diverse range of stakeholders, including representatives from civil society, international organizations, and member states. And 3 key areas for action emerged from this broad scoping phase. First, governance and legal systems should integrate an intergenerational perspective to prioritize the well-being of current and future generations. This will allow for the long-term thinking and acting that we need. Second, generations should work together in addressing major societal challenges such as environmental justice, rising inequalities, social cohesion, and resilience. And third, generations should collaborate in reinforcing the European social model. We must anticipate the long-term systemic impact of short-term targeted interventions, and these themes will be covered in a scoping report to be published by the Joint Research Center. And these insights then created the foundation for phase 2, which is ongoing, the vision building phase. And here as well, we've tried to ensure that diverse stakeholders are represented in consultations. The focus is on constructing imaginative futures that depict a fair world for all generations. And this involves creating snapshots of the future that highlight the benefits of intergenerational fairness and the potential costs of inaction. Coalitions made up of scientists and civil society have been created around crucial topics identified during the consultations, such as indeed climate change, health, and social equity. ensuring that the strategy addresses the needs of both the current and future generations, and to further ensure that citizens have a strong role in shaping the strategy besides this inclusive co-creation process that I have mentioned. We will hold a European Citizens Panel this autumn. This will feed into the final phase leading up to the strategy. It's something that I've been involved in for a very long time, and it's the legacy of the Conference on the Future of Europe that took place in 2021, 2022, where we had 800 randomly selected citizens that made up the conference panels, calling for more frequent opportunities for citizen participation in European policymaking. And these panels have now become a regular feature of European democratic life, involving citizens in the policymaking process. And for the strategy of intergenerational fairness, around 150 randomly selected citizens will come together from across the European Union to formulate recommendations on key aspects of the strategy. And their input will be crucial as we head into the next phases of the co-creation process. So, ladies and gentlemen, through your participation in the consultation phases, you have already played a key role in shaping the strategy for intergenerational fairness. And with this strategy, we can foster intergenerational solidarity to bring all Europeans together, regardless of age, making an asset of generational diversity. So let's work together towards a strategy that creates a more prosperous, competitive, and cohesive society for Europeans, and for the benefit indeed of Europeans of all ages, and for Europe's future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General, for bringing this additional clarification on the ambition, on the process for the strategy. Without more, let's say, introduction, I think you, Dr. Kearney, you will bring us an additional, after this institutional, let's say, contribution to our discussion from the research that will be equally interesting for us. So the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. That was really interesting to hear. And it's so great that we're here to help inform your work at this vision building stage, as you said. So I hope this talk is going to help with that. Is somebody going to move my slides for me, or do I do it myself? Do I just say move? Will I say next slide? Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. And I can see now why it is important to step back and have a look at the big picture. I have done a lot of work on solidarity between generations in terms of research, and I've put a lot of thought into what I'm going to say today in these 10 minutes. And that's because, and I've thought about the intergenerational fairness angle, and I've looked at what the Commission are working on at the moment, and I've really come down to think that the most important thing for us as activists, I think, is to take forward this idea of solidarity and really make sure that that is central to what the EU Commission is doing. And that's because when you think about it, solidarity between generations is the cornerstone of social protection. It's how we actually look after one another on a daily basis within the family. And it is also something that we have used and taken for granted, like clean air, or like clean water, or fresh air rather. It is something that we just use every day. If you got up this morning and you took your kids to school, if you have an older relative that you take care of, these are things that we do. You're there practicing solidarity between generations. It's something that the Romans did, the ancient Greeks, and it's absolutely fundamental. Can I have the next slide, please? Nowadays, though, what we increasingly see is generation discussed but divorced from this concept of solidarity. And I think that's actually a mistake, because actually generations are by nature cooperative. Nobody lives in isolation. And we saw this with that absolutely dreadful experiment in human isolation, which was COVID-19. We saw young children really struggling without their teachers. We saw grandparents devastated without contact with their grandchildren. And that is a brilliant example of how fundamental solidarity between generations is, to social protection. It's fundamental to underpinning the agreements we have in terms of the welfare states. It is how we actually look after each other and protect ourselves against the inevitable risks and dangers of human life. Since then, we've seen a bit of a move towards individualism. So what I'm going to do, can you click on, sorry? I thought I'd have this myself. I'm going to have a talk about some of the issues that I think are underpinning the Commission's approach, which are really important around politics. And then I'm going to give the backbone to the kind of argument that I'm making, which is that I believe there are 4 intergenerational myths that are pervasive, and that these are the reasons why it can be very difficult to make policy that is good for all generations, but it is possible. So the next slide, please. And you can flick on. Sorry, I'm not doing this I'm not going on to the next one. Okay. So what has solidarity between generations got to do with politics? I think that the crisis of democracy that we're seeing today is actually really one of the drivers behind the EU's focus on youth and futures, and it's completely understandable. What we've seen is a lot of populist movements start to use kind of fear to embolden their political supporters, and this is often framed in terms of generational trends or generational inequity. But there are some really important issues that we need to address. And one of them is that younger people are a lot less likely to vote than older people. Lots of different research from around the world has shown that generations born before the 1980s are twice as likely to vote as those born since then. Twice as likely to vote. The other thing is that we've seen an increase in parties on the extremes, right and left. And many of these are actually better explained in terms of support for them by gender rather than generation. The decline in voting participation amongst younger people is very gendered. Men are more politically active than women. Women are increasingly disenchanted with politics. And these are gender and generation gaps that interact together that we really need to address. So this is why it's so challenging what the Commission is trying to face. And I think we must help them in every way we can. Older people can be very innovative, and we can help you to take fully into consideration the views of all generations. So this is why I've laid out these 4 generational myths, 2 relate to democracy and 2 to equality, and all 4 suggest that solidarity between, the next slide please, solidarity between generations is the best way to ensure that decision-making impacts positively on future generations. So, sorry, on to the next one then. So, myth number 1 is the myth that ageism affects only older generations. One of my favorite studies of ageism by North and Fisk actually found that teenagers were more likely to experience age discrimination than any other group. And can you press the slide again? Thanks. And I often illustrate this with to my students with this poster that was circulated by the British police some years ago. So there's the tendency to go trick-or-treating amongst young people, and teenagers, when they get a bit bored of trick-or-treating, have been known to buy eggs and flour and throw it at people's doors. So the police thought it was a good idea to produce this. Sorry, no eggs or flour will be sold to young people at Halloween. A perfect example of age discrimination. So why are we not up in arms about this? And that's, I think, because teenagers grow out of that. They grow into that peak period of life when we don't experience age discrimination until they reach about my age. I'll be 50 in September. Can you press it again? And then they start getting these kind of birthday cards, and you experience age discrimination again. A solidarity between generations approach actually means that teenagers and older people come together and say, is somebody waving at me at the back? What's he saying? Speak more slowly. I'm Irish, sorry. Contrast this with a solidarity between generations approach, where you have the possibility of teenagers and older people working together to combat age discrimination they both face. The next myth is that older generations vote for authoritarian and far-right movements. So I started looking at this area when we had the Brexit vote in the UK, because there was a sense that it was a lot of older people who had voted for Brexit. It turned out that actually gender and education were better at explaining what had happened there. But there has been this sense that older people are voting for authoritarian leaders. If you press again there, thanks. Can you press the slide again? Yeah. Actually, if you look at more recent evidence from the European elections in 2024, you see that the group that was least likely to vote for the AfD was actually the over 60s. The gap is that older generations turn out at elections. Younger voters are increasingly divided along gender lines, with a rise in activism amongst men and increasing disenchantment with politics amongst women. So to take on the challenge of the far right, solidarity between women and men of all generations who believe in equality, human rights and freedom, that's what we need to protect the values of our democracy. The next slide, please. Myth number 3, that each generation is destined to be economically better off than their parents. So we've enjoyed 80 years of peace and prosperity in Europe, and that's a direct result of the post-war consensus, the establishment of collectivist welfare states, and that is underpinned by our solidarity between generations contract. That's led to an expectation of continually increasing incomes, health and welfare. But since the 2008 crash, we've seen cracks in the system, with wild increases in income inequality, as rich families hoard wealth for generations. Can you click, please? So I've looked at this research. This is from the Sunday Times Rich List, brilliant work that's been done by Ben Tippett in England. And he says, today, the wealth of the richest 200 families far exceeds the wealth of the British government. And that is not just in Britain. There's a link in my talk to show that that's in EU countries too. So this massive increase in wealth gaps has huge political implications. It's produced populist political parties on both the right and the left who will blame either migrants or older people. It's very often put within this generational frame, and there is the eternal war of words, of course, on social media. A more enlightened explanation of the falling incomes of younger people cites massive structural changes. We've deregulated our markets. We've moved our economies online. All generations face declining social mobility. So if we want to bring back social mobility, all generations must act collectively to empower states to tax wealth as well as income. So I'm coming to the end now. Myth number 4. No, could you go back one? Yeah, myth number 4. Fairness is more important than solidarity. The final myth is fundamental. It's the belief that the job of government is to be fair. But when you really start to think about that, we need to think about it we need to kind of put it upside down. The basic premise of government is that through solidarity, we can guard against unfairness. Life is never fair because humans are diverse. They have different needs. They're often random or unexpected. That could be you're in a car crash and you get a disability, or they can be societal level, such as coping with the challenges like climate change or rural depopulation. None of these can be addressed by individual action. They all require us as generations to work together. So can we go to my final slide? I'll leave you with this thought. No matter the scale of the problem, none will be faced without intergenerational solidarity. As each generation is born, dies, and is replaced, it's literally impossible to face any challenge without joining hands with your parents, grandparents, children, and grandchildren. So here's to the next 2,000 years of solidarity between generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now we've got a very concrete frame to our discussion today, both from the conceptual perspective about intergenerational solidarity, but also from the institutional side. It was not foreseen that we will have questions and answers. You, Director General, you will leave us after this opening panel, but indeed we do have a member of Commissioner Micallef's cabinet who is with us, I think already, if not, will join us very soon. And we will have the opportunity actually to address some of the issues which will come up during the day. And of course, we will come back to you later with feedback. But because I introduced, and you, Dr. Kearney, you are staying with us, so that will be definitely also, there will be opportunity to maybe build up and continue on what you have just said. But because, as I just mentioned in the introduction, that we are also today giving the floor to some additional speakers who are not in the room. So I thought that maybe before closing this panel, we could listen to the it's a very short, it will be not more than, I think, 3 minutes. So we'll have a video, a first testimony about bridging the gap between generations with 3 speakers of different ages. First, we'll have Dr. Clive College, retired art director in advertising and marketing, TED Talk speaker on why baby boomers, millennials, and Generation X do not exist, another myth. Then we'll have Benjamin Borgen Pedersen, board member of the Danish Youth Movement and a member of the Danish Youth Climate Council. Greta, I think it was a good, I would say, how to say, connection. And then, last but not least, Laure Westerate, board member of the European Youth Forum. So another, I would say, peer organization here at the European level. Youth Forum is also equally concerned and active in this strategy. So stopping here, and we can have the 3 testimonies.
My name's Clive College. I'm 78 years old. I got a PhD at 64. I did a TED Talk at 70. And both really were around advertising to generations and particularly values they had.
Hello, I am Laure Verstraete. I'm a board member of the European Youth Forum, and I'm also a member of the Youth Advisory Panel of the EU's Fundamental Rights Agency.
Hi, I'm Benjamin, and I'm from Denmark and represent the Danish youth organization named SEGA and the Danish Youth Climate Council here.
Intergenerational solidarity means to me working together like a family. They fall out sometimes, that's okay, that's part of it. But they respect each other and hear what each other's saying.
Intergenerational solidarity means much more than just kind of the values that are inherent in the word. And it's much more about kind of enabling that solidarity by ways of engaging and including both younger and older people.
Today, it's so important because there's a gap between generations. They're misunderstanding each other. And it's mainly because there is a myth which has grown up about generations, which started in advertising, that we're all different. Each generation is different. And I don't believe it.
The issues of older people will eventually become the issues of younger people if they are not addressed, which is why we need to address them if we want to build a fair and sustainable future for every generation.
Right now, society is really kind of facing pressures from all angles. I mean, we have climate tipping points approaching. We have new AI policymaking that is going to transform the way we live, the way we work. We've got economic uncertainty, and a lot of this kind of just affects the mostly vulnerable people, being old people and young people.
For me, the main obstacle to intergenerational cooperation are ageist stereotypes. We have a lot of them, for example, that young people are lazy, that they don't care about politics, or that they vote for the far right, and they are just not true. And if we really want to achieve a world where intergenerational fairness is at the heart of decision making, then we need to debunk these stereotypes.
Breaking all of us down into something called generations is a stereotype anyway. If you look at what happened to baby boomers, then baby boomers themselves have been called a brand. Now, human beings are not brands. When we meet somebody, we should know and remember that that's a human being that we're talking to. And we go to them as that human being, not somebody who's going to be judged because we think about what age they are, or they say a certain word that makes them different to us because our generation wouldn't use that word.
I really think a lot of the kind of lack of collaboration between the two groups are a structural issue, and therefore we also need kind of more legal frameworks and formal processes that actually enable this collaboration between them.
We have a lot of ageist stereotypes, and to ensure that we can really cooperate together, we need to show positive examples of cooperation between younger generations and older generations. We can only have sustainable and fair policymaking if we take into account all the different generations. So we needed to start doing this decades ago, so let's please start doing this today.
We've had aging strategies, but we need kind of a shared responsibility and in that sense have more of a collaborative approach to these things.
As I was answering those questions, I kept thinking of what you've done already as Europe, as the EU. You've brought together different cultures and different countries, and you've made it work. Incredibly difficult thing to do. There's got to be things that you've done to get there, which you can apply to bringing generations together.
Much, I think we can applaud these additional testimonials, which brought, as I said, nuances. Once again, I would like as well ask for a big applaud to our two speakers who opened the conference. Once again, thank you very much, Director General and Dr. Kearney. In this way, we close this opening panel. I will now I will hand over to Piotr Nakonieczny, our member who will actually introduce the following panel. And again, we are having you with us for the rest of the conference, and Director General. Once again, thank you very much for coming to Leuven, and we stay in touch for the follow-up on the strategy. Thank you very much.
Good morning. We are again. My name is Piotr Nakonieczny. I am the founder and the chairman of the board Foundation Bonum Vitae, working on the older person and a member of this platform. I'll be happy to moderate this panel. We're excited to welcome you to What Promises and thought-provoking and insightful panel discussion on addressing shared interest and challenges across generations. Generations are united by more than we might expect. They share the same desire for the better, fairer, and more equal world. They also face common challenges such as climate change, digital transformation, access to care, access to housing, access to employment, and the rising cost of the living. Yet we also share aspirations, dignity, autonomy, equality, participation, freedom, and a sustainable future. This panel will explore how we can move beyond narratives of generational divide and instead focus on building bridges through local initiatives, policy, dialogue, and practical cooperation. We are very fortunate to have with us 4 exceptional panelists, leaders in their fields, who will bring their knowledge, experience, and unique perspectives for the conversation. Let me take a moment to introduce each of them. First, we have Moira Allen, Hold Up, Lead Europe, age member and co-founder and international coordinator at Pass It On Network. Welcome, please. Thank you. Next, we have Johanna Schima, Vice President and Head EU Delegation, Make Mothers Matter. Our third panelist is Carol Gadet, in charge of intergenerational projects in Educational National France, Paris Academy, member of a network of European researchers, co-founder of the Assemble Domain Association, author, speaker, and trainer in intergenerational issues. Please welcome. And finally, we have Sabine Springer, project manager of Equality, Roma and Social Rights Unit, Fundamental Rights Agency. So let's begin the conversation. Ms. Allen, could you share your thoughts on why intergenerational connection and dialogue are important for people of different age groups, and maybe speak about some similar forms of discrimination and common challenges that both younger and older generation may face?
Yes. I hate talking sitting down, so if you don't mind, I'm going to stand up. Is that okay? Good. So I belong to Old Up, a French association. It has this provocative name of Old Up, which is English, and in French it means Les Vieux Debout, which means that we stand up for raising the voice of older people, and we seek to find meaning in the additional longevity that we have today. And we, as Old Up, we were invited by the European Youth Forum and Age Platform to participate in the MEET project, which was run over 2023 and 2024. And it was an absolutely fascinating project. It was run over 15 different European countries, and the objective was to emphasize the values of democracy and to incite people to vote in the June 24 elections. So I think that the best thing that I can do in order to answer your question is just to go through the different lessons that we learned from this exercise. There were so many, because we were interacting all the time with these young people, finding them, realizing what their difficulties were. But we did, in fact, come up with 7 basic lessons that we had learnt. So I have to put this down and just find my lessons. So the very first lesson that we realized, and which has been mentioned several times today, is the complexity of the world in which we are living today. You know, everything is so complex, and all the challenges that we are facing, be it the droughts, the fires, the rain, the scarcity of food, climate issues, just you can go on and on. But all of these challenges are totally age indiscriminate. They totally ignore any age. A flood is not going to say, you know, excuse me, you're a young child, I'm going to pass you by, or you're an old person. We're all subjected to these. So what we absolutely need to do is to collaborate and to co-generate the solutions. We all have different experiences and different levels of experiences. The other point that we learned is that once you have a common goal and you're working towards a common goal, nothing about age has anything to do with it. You can be in a team where there are people of 16 and people of 75. And the only objective is to reach the goal, and whatever you can bring, you can bring. The third lesson was curiosity. It's just so important to maintain and develop and cultivate our own curiosity, because this is an absolutely extraordinary world and an extraordinary period that we're living through. And the more that we're curious about it, the more stimulating it is, and the more we actually find enjoyment in this. The other one is communication, clear, truthful, just, and inclusive communication down the line. And then collaboration, but more than collaboration, co-creation. Everybody has something to contribute, and that contribution needs to be made. And then we also learned that it was to have continuity in whatever we were doing. You know, flash in the pan actions are very good and they make an impact immediately, but what you need is to keep on and keep on and keep on. And that way you not only increase your impact, but you build on the relationships. And then the seventh and final one was the whole factor of reciprocity. You know, this is just so important. It's give and take, but that's what life is all about. And at any stage of our life, we are always older than somebody and younger than somebody. So I like to say, you know, just remember that all the time and pass a hand down and take the hand above you and let us just get on with it. You know, as the gentleman who was a TED talker said, this whole thing about chopping us into slices, you know, of this generation and that generation is a marketing thing. You know, so let's stop being dupe, okay? And the other thing about the reciprocity is that we've all said and we all agree that intergenerational actions are the vector of social cohesion. And we are all, throughout our lives, both learners and teachers. And we need to be humble. We need to know when we can be teaching, and we need to be able to accept when other people are teaching us. So those are the very, very important lessons that we have learned. And do I get a chance to speak later, or must I say it all now? Okay. So I just wanted to ask you to do something with me. I want you to create for yourself a generational ladder. So you take any piece of paper and you divide it into 3 columns. Tuck, tuck. And you do headings up at the top. The first heading on the left-hand side is under, UNDER. The next heading is family stroke friends. And by friends, I mean really close friends, the one that you can ring up at 3 o'clock in the morning if you have a problem. And the next column is other. Then in the lines that go across, just count down incrementally in 7s. So it's under 7, under 14, under 21, under 28, under 35, etc. And you can go up to 104 if you feel like it. But then take some time and just write down the names of the people in your entourage that fit into those different categories. And you'll soon realize and see very clearly what your own intergenerational situation is. And I really invite you to go into that because it's very telling. So thank you very much. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you very much. I'm sure the next time you should think about some workshop with, right? So, Ms. Shima, could you, Joanna, sure. Dear Joanna, could you tell us more about the interests and challenges that are shared between children, parents, and grandparents from the perspective of your organization?
Thank you. I have some, does it work? Yeah, I have some, yeah, thank you very much. So I represent May Mothers Matter. It's an international NGO working for the rights and needs and challenges of mothers at the UN, EU, and UNESCO level. So we defend intergenerational solidarity because we believe that's the only way forward. We believe, maybe first, Philippe, the way we care for the children, the way we care for our parents, the way how we value unpaid care work, not only defines our present, but also defines the future of our societies. And grandparents come into this equation. They play a vital role, as we all know it, in taking care of the children. They impact the child's development and education. They offer emotional support, stability, and offer an essential caregiving to the children. And their contribution to also helps parents, in particular for us, mothers, that are often overwhelming, an overwhelming balance of care and professional life. But today, this role of grandparents is not really recognized as it should be. We know that the idea of intergenerational solidarity is not new at the EU. We have it in the Treaty on the European Union, where it calls for solidarity between generations as a cornerstone of our society and shared future. We know there are also initiatives from the EU, like the Work-Life Balance Directive. We have the EU Care Strategy. But 1/3 of parents find it difficult to combine paid work and care responsibilities. Parents, especially mothers, often face serious problems reconciling parenthood and a working career. And gender stereotypes, lack of support, mean that mothers perform a disproportionate care role in their families, which many times impacts negative their professional careers. This increase the gender and pension and pay gaps. And mother often spend more time and impacted more than fathers. That's what we call the motherhood penalty. They often have career interruptions. They often take up, after the child is born, they keep of low or part-time works, low-paid part-time works. So we believe that for mothers, they should be the choice to nurture a child and to choose a career should not be a choice, but it should be a right that should be fully supported. We see also here that we need to take into consideration other policies that include unpaid care work, such as the care credits recognition of parental leave in pension calculations. Somebody spoke about social security, the ability to transfer parental leave days to grandparents, the recognition of parental, that means also caring skills, if we want to talk about lifelong learning. And this role can also be fulfilled not only by the biological parents, but also by older people who are active, as we know, and willing to do that. Just some numbers. In France, 70% of the childcare for children under 6 is occasionally taken by grandparents, but 1 of 4 children are cared by the grandparents weekly. In the UK, is 40% of the grandparents over 50 regularly take care of providing care of the children, and 71% of those who are between 50 and 64 years old are still working. So maybe next. But we also know that the choice for grandparents to choose grandparents in the role of caring for children is in many places as financial concerns, but also because these are trustworthy caregivers. Having raised children themselves, they are seen as the naturally qualified people to provide this care, and their involvement should only be based in voluntary basis. That I would like to insist on that. And this could also, of course, enhance intergenerational bonds. But this is not only about families, this is also about the adults themselves. We believe, or we know, that retirement brings also loneliness and boredom, affecting seniors typically in mental health and physical health, encouraging older adults to stay in this way active by providing care to younger generations. We believe that we can prevent this loneliness, mental issues, even physical health issues. And this intergenerational bond also nurtures the future families and bonds across generations. we believe, I don't know if I mean, some examples, maybe we see it here. There are some countries that are already moving forwards, like in Sweden, there is a parental leave that can be transferred to grandparents. In Germany and Austria, there are, for the German-speaking people here, the so-called Leih-Omas, Leih-Opas that are in inverted commas borrow grandparents. They do it under voluntary conditions. In the UK, there is the child benefit credits that can be transferred to grandparents, and also when the child is born. In Portugal, we have the same thing. Working grandparents can receive some days of allowance. Companies are exploring also these ideas of supporting intergenerational work-life balance. And we have, from the international examples, we have the city of Nagi in Japan, which included and embedded this system of including grandparents helping kids and helping parents in the work-life balance. And this has represented a success in the city, improving birth rates, including more healthy aging, and better work-life balance for the parents. Maybe just very quickly, some numbers from a EU survey that Make Mothers Matter did, where you see all the mothers reduce their working hours. They are negatively impacted in their careers after giving birth. They only receive partial support, and 27% have access to teleworking options. Next, please. 63% that can go in many countries, up to 70%. Mothers do the household and caregiving tasks on their own. And 25% of parents didn't take paternity leave. So we want to be very careful with these models that we are supporting. It's very important to support the engagement of older people in taking care and helping families, even if they are not the biological families. But we have to be sure that fathers to take their parental leave. We don't want to switch the role that they have to play to to older people. I think maybe, do I come again? No. So you see here what is the first option that the mothers said in our survey. Depending on the age, preschool children or school age children, grandparents or other family members play a very important role. The next one, please. We see the grandparent support across the countries that we interview. Next, please. These are just summarizing the recommendations that we give to the EU and to everybody here. Redefining work as a holistic concept is very important for us, which includes pay and unpaid work. And we believe with the professor, you said about the division of societies. We believe that we live in silos. We believe in silos because of age, because of work, even architecture is a silo. And we know that intergenerational solidarity, including housing, is a way forward. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. Ms. Gadet, you have been involved in the unique European intergenerational educational program project. Could you tell us more about this? What best practices can we learn from this project?
Ok. Hello. Good morning. Je vais parler en français. Alors, si je suis là devant vous aujourd'hui, c'est le fruit de 25 années de travail passionné et engagé sur la question de l'intergénérationnel. Chercheur dans le réseau COST, auteur, chargé de mission approche intergénérationnelle pour le ministère de l'Éducation nationale en France, une mission unique en Europe. Formatrice, conférencière, j'ai l'honneur de porter cette thématique en France comme à l'international à travers des conférences, des colloques et formations que j'anime depuis plus de 15 ans dans le domaine de l'éducation, de la santé, du logement, de la citoyenneté, du numérique, de la culture, de l'emploi. Mon approche s'appuie sur une expertise en ingénierie de projet intergénérationnel et en ingénierie relationnelle, au plus près des réalités de terrain comme des enjeux stratégiques. Parmi les expériences marquantes de mon parcours, j'ai eu l'honneur de copiloter l'année européenne du vieillissement actif et de la solidarité intergénérationnelle en 2012, en lien étroit avec la Commission européenne, dans un cadre interministériel en France. Cette responsabilité a été l'occasion de mobiliser une grande diversité d'acteurs publics et associatifs et de faire émerger des politiques transversales plaçant le lien entre les générations au cœur des priorités sociales. Dans la continuité de cette mission, la Commission européenne m'a confié en 2012 l'objectif, la création de ressources intergénérationnelles éducatives à l'échelle européenne, qui ont été diffusées et utilisées dans plusieurs pays pour encourager des projets partagés éducatifs innovants. En parallèle, ces 15 dernières années, j'ai publié plusieurs collections d'ouvrages sur l'intergénérationnel qui explorent ses applications concrètes dans des domaines essentiels tels que l'éducation, la santé, le logement, la prévention des risques et plus largement l'innovation sociale. Je suis également fondatrice d'une association qui s'appelle Ensemble Demain, qui est experte européenne en intergénérationnel et qui accompagne institutions, ministères, collectivités et réseaux professionnels dans une dynamique de transformation sociale intergénérationnelle. Le programme dont je vais vous parler, que je pilote donc pour le ministère de l'Éducation nationale en France, est un programme unique. Je l'ai créé donc dans les années 2000, il y a 25 ans, en tant qu'enseignante d'abord, puis donc j'ai commencé à faire de la recherche. Je développe ce programme en fait depuis 2000 en fonction des programmes scolaires, des priorités académiques, des priorités ministérielles. Et ce programme permet à toutes les générations de travailler ensemble sur le temps scolaire et périscolaire. Un programme qui a été créé dans l'Académie de Paris, qui est mon terrain d'expérimentation depuis plus de 25 ans. Et aujourd'hui, ce programme est développé dans 80 départements en France, avec un axe international, parce que via le réseau COST, j'ai fait des conférences un petit peu partout en Europe et sur l'international au sujet justement de ce programme. Mon engagement repose sur une conviction simple mais puissante. L'intergénérationnel est une clé pour mieux apprendre, mieux comprendre, mieux vivre ensemble. Dans ce contexte, je me réjouis que la Commission européenne, à travers la nomination, la mission du commissaire Glenn Micallef, affirme qu'aujourd'hui, une volonté forte de construire une stratégie d'équité intergénérationnelle, car l'enjeu est crucial. Dans une Europe où les seniors seront près de 130 millions d'ici 2050, où les jeunes aspirent à du sens, du lien, de la solidarité, nous devons construire des ponts entre les âges. L'intergénérationnel, c'est la réponse à ce besoin de cohésion sociale, d'écoute mutuelle, de transmission, de durabilité et d'innovation. D'accord. Ce programme intergénérationnel, Éducation nationale en France, donc, est un programme qui a été présenté, donc, qui est labellisé européen par la Commission européenne depuis 2012, qui est reconnu par l'UNESCO, l'OCDE. D'ailleurs, M. Schleicher, le directeur de l'éducation, est venu lors d'un colloque que nous avons organisé en France en 2018. Et également, il a été présenté au Forum mondial de la démocratie et de l'éducation au Conseil de l'Europe. C'est à ce jour le seul programme officiellement intégré sur le temps scolaire et porté par un ministère en Europe. À partir de l'enseignement moral et civique, de la transmission de l'histoire et de la mémoire, de la maîtrise de la langue, de l'éducation à la santé, de l'éducation à l'alimentation, à l'environnement et au développement durable, de l'éducation artistique, éducation physique et sportive, des arts visuels, de l'éducation musicale, des nouvelles technologies, de l'enseignement des mathématiques. Ma mission, Éducation nationale France, a développé des dispositifs pédagogiques qui promeuvent les échanges intergénérationnels, la transmission et le partage de savoir, de culture et de valeurs entre les générations. Concrètement, il s'agit de créer des ateliers pédagogiques intergénérationnels sur le temps scolaire rassemblant des jeunes, donc de la petite enfance, donc école, collège, lycée, avec des étudiants, des parents, des grands-parents, des seniors actifs et des seniors dépendants. Et les thématiques qui sont travaillées sont histoire et mémoire, éducation et développement durable, arts et culture, santé et nutrition, citoyenneté européenne, nouvelles technologies, langue vivante, philosophie, littérature, sport, bien-être, formation tout au long de la vie, enseignement et formation professionnelle, découverte des métiers. Ce programme favorise l'interdisciplinarité, renforce les apprentissages fondamentaux, développe les compétences transversales et psychosociales et apaise le climat scolaire. L'école devient un lieu de dialogue, d'enrichissement mutuel et d'apprentissage du vivre ensemble. Projet autour de la lecture, du conte, du théâtre, de la poésie, de la danse, découverte des métiers, des sciences, des langues, langues régionales, langues vivantes, de l'hygiène, de la santé, des nouvelles technologies, des programmes aussi autour des valeurs de la République, harcèlement, égalité filles-garçons, fraternité, solidarité, handicap. Ces actions mobilisent toutes les générations. Pourquoi cela fonctionne? Parce que cela répond à des besoins profonds. L'intergénérationnel permet de consolider les apprentissages fondamentaux, développer l'empathie, la gestion des émotions, la confiance en soi, valoriser la diversité des savoirs et des parcours de vie, apaiser les tensions, restaurer le dialogue, créer du lien entre générations, ancrer les élèves dans une vision citoyenne, inclusive et solidaire. Son impact dépasse largement les murs de l'école. Il prépare les élèves à comprendre les métiers, les parcours professionnels, les parcours de vie, à envisager leur avenir avec lucidité et ouverture. Il participe pleinement à une logique de formation tout au long de la vie, indispensable dans nos sociétés en transformation. Il favorise le développement de compétences pluridisciplinaires, transversales et humaines, si précieuses dans le monde d'aujourd'hui. Vous savez tous que le 29 avril est la journée européenne de la solidarité intergénérationnelle. Eh bien, en France, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale français a décidé depuis 2013 que le 29 avril devenait la journée nationale de la solidarité intergénérationnelle pour le système éducatif français. Nous sommes le seul pays également en Europe à avoir officiellement choisi cette journée comme la journée nationale de la solidarité intergénérationnelle pour le système éducatif français. Depuis plus de 15 ans, le ministère de l'Éducation nationale français et l'Académie de Paris, dans laquelle je travaille du coup, qui est mon terrain d'expérimentation, organisent des colloques nationaux et européens sur l'intergénérationnel dans le milieu éducatif pour favoriser ces projets et démontrer combien l'intergénérationnel est au cœur des enjeux éducatifs, sociaux et politiques du XXIe siècle. Le programme éducatif intergénérationnel français renforce l'apprentissage du citoyen en devenir et les fondements de la démocratie, une solution pérenne pour faire cohabiter harmonieusement et pédagogiquement dans les établissements scolaires nos élèves et le reste de la population. Mesdames et messieurs, je me réjouis donc que le commissaire Micallef porte cette ambition de justice intergénérationnelle. Notre programme Éducation nationale France s'inscrit pleinement dans cette vision. Il vise à éduquer les jeunes, à comprendre les impacts de leurs choix sur le monde de demain, tout en s'appuyant sur l'expérience de leurs aînés. Je suis convaincue que l'intergénérationnel est une réponse européenne aux défis de notre temps. Lutter contre le jeunisme et l'agisme et toutes les discriminations fondées sur l'âge. Promouvoir une vision durable, inclusive et équitable de la société. Construire une union de la transmission, du dialogue et de la responsabilité partagée.
Thank you very much,
Et enfin, la conclusion, l'intergénérationnel ne nie pas les différences, il est en fait une richesse. Il n'oppose pas les âges, il les relie. C'est un formidable levier de résilience, de cohésion sociale et d'innovation. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Our time is running. Thank you. So, Ms. Springer, could you give us an overview of the FRA's work on the intergenerational solidarity and how the agency ensures that the voices of older persons are heard?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning and thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here and part of this because it really opens my mind. There are so many already new ideas It's just great. Thank you very much. And I also wanted to thank Age Platform Europe for the cooperation with the Fundamental Rights Agency for years now, and it's a very good and encouraging cooperation. I don't know if you know that the Fundamental Rights Agency works rights-based and evidence-based, meaning that we are looking at the rights of individuals, of groups, but we are also looking for evidence. We are doing projects, we are doing qualitative research, policy research, legal research, but we are also collecting data. And I just recently, when I prepared for this, found in an article a hint that Fundamental Rights Agency should be working on intergenerational solidarity since 2008. There was mentioned that Fundamental Rights Agency should play a role. But it was just recently that this topic came up again. As you might have seen, I'm a demographer. And that's why this is in my area of work at FRA. And I just wanted to say, for us, generations is a tool. It's to look at different age groups, and they have lived and grown up in certain circumstances. And this also helps to understand the living, their situation, their reactions, and their understanding of society. So what we are doing is we are researching concerning discrimination, social exclusion, lack of protection of specific groups such as Roma, LGBTIQ persons, immigrants, persons with disabilities, but also concerning children, youth, and older persons. Groups whose voices are not always heard. So, especially in the 3 age groups, it's for various reasons these voices are not always heard. One of them might be that they don't yet have the right to vote or to stand for elections. Others are no longer able to vote or to raise their voices in public. Concerning older persons, FRA has done research and published reports to highlight some of the concerns of older persons. In 2018, we published a report on shifting perceptions, a rights-based approach to aging. And since then, we are speaking very much about active aging and lifelong learning. And lifelong learning plays a role in another report we published in 2023 on fundamental rights of older persons, ensuring access to digital services. In this report, we were looking at the problems on the legal and policy areas, the problems of older persons to access public services, which under the digital decade are supposed to become, to move more and more digital. So whenever you wanted to do something with administration, public administration, you normally go through portals and so on. So this was not always accessible, also from a point of view of persons with disabilities. And so we called for a choice to access these, of the way how you access these services. And also to better know the needs of older persons in these areas, but also in others. We asked for an extension of the data collections to persons beyond 74 or persons living in institutions. There's a good news at the moment. Eurostat is looking into the possibility. They are doing a feasibility study. They are looking into the possibility to interview persons in institutions in the European Health and Interview Survey. So this is a great step forward. We are not yet there, but it's very complicated to extend surveys to these not so easy to reach and interview groups. FRA also does data collection. So we are surveying groups that are often not sufficiently covered in other surveys. So for instance, Roma, immigrants, LGBTIQ persons, and we ask about their experiences of discrimination, violence, and living conditions. These results are as much as possible broken down by age groups and other characteristics to better understand the problems. But often older persons are underrepresented in our surveys, and the interpretation of the results for these groups is difficult, therefore, and might not be representative. And younger children are not included in our surveys because surveys on children are extremely cost-intensive and very complicated because of all the safeguards you have to take. So this is not a problem that can be easily fixed, and it's linked to high costs, and that's especially in the context of face-to-face interviews, which are increasingly expensive. So the data collection lacks we are acknowledging are not easy to be fixed. But we are actively involved in the equality data team from Eurostat and pushing for more inclusive data collection. But the way we are looking at groups does not really link to intergenerational solidarity or fairness. We are looking at age groups, we are looking across age groups, but up to now, we were not really having a concept on how, with our work, legal, policy, and data collection, we can take this perspective. And I'm reeling on a very steep learning curve. So now we are involved in this already mentioned project on intergenerational fairness, which is to prepare the strategy for intergenerational fairness. And we are looking and we want to bring in our input from a rights perspective. And we are working on this. This project, as far as I understand, and as far as it is a huge project, is so rich with information. It's so exciting, but it's so overwhelming. I have to say, when you come from outside and you see what's going on there, and you see all, you are not focusing on one of the topics. You just say, "Oh my God, where do I start?" So I'm starting to be involved in there, and I'm extremely happy to be so. But as I said, it is a steep learning curve. I also want to mention that FRA does its own foresight workshops now, and there also intergenerational fairness is a topic, but we will only have the results in some months. But now I want to mention a very concrete step we went. We have created a youth advisory panel to give young people the possibility to give their input in our work. I have to say, we are already from the older generations, so we are really lacking in our staff, the very young ones. So this is a good possibility to bring in young people and to share their views. And one of their tasks, so they are established since April this year, and you have seen one of our members doing a testimonial, which I was very glad that she did it. And it's a great group. It's 7 young people. They are between 18 and 26 now, from different countries, a very diverse background, very challenging. We are having continuous intergenerational dialogues because I'm turning 60 this year. And yes, it's great. So I can only say you learn so much. So I'm here with my computer now because I'm really getting more digital. So this is something where we really, I enjoy it very much, but it's also very challenging for us as an institution. How can we take these voices on board? How can we channel it so that it makes a difference?
Thank you very much.
Intergenerational.
Yes, time is running. Let's give a chance our audience to address some question to our expert. Yes, please, Anthony.
We talk of intergenerational solidarity. Am I right to assume that this includes intragenerational solidarity?
This question addressed to whom? Who would like to?
Absolutely. You know, it's just as we've said earlier, that life is a progression from birth through to death, and intergenerational and intragenerational. And if you like, I can just tell you quickly, at Old Up, for example, it was started by people in their 70s. And their first occupation was to have discussion groups to examine the difficulties of 70-year-olds. And then they all became 80. And then their needs changed. So they had discussion groups for the Octo Plus. And now they've all progressed one decade above, and they're 90-year-olds, but their needs are different. And this is the interesting thing. The intragenerational aspect of this organization, Old Up, is really, really fascinating. And that's what it's about as well.
May I? Sorry. Okay, I may continue from this also, but also what the last panelist said. The definition intergenerational dialogue, that is what it is. In many communication between the generations. My question to you would be, to all of you perhaps, is that what are the tools? How can you spur it? Are they only within the family? Is it the virtual things, which is digitalization, which will spur this kind of intergenerational dialogue? In my opinion, it is very important. We have to take into action. This is a question to you. Thank you.
That I have the microphone. Can I? Yeah. There are many tools, and I think the other panelists would say something, but I would like to share with you, all of you, something that is an example of on the way that you're asking, how we can make this dialogue. We have an organization in Belgium who is started to work more than 30 years ago with supporting mothers who were fleeing domestic violence. And they quickly realized, because they had the people also asking they provide this space to live. And they quickly started to receive demands from other people, families, just they wanted to have a roof under their heads. And they started to think, well, this is great, because they started to see that mothers were feeling much secure because they were changing with the older people. The kids started to behave a little bit more natural and not so scared. They believe, and these mothers acknowledge once, I mean, they spent some years there, and they say, well, this was so important for us because this gave us a sense of security. We were not just living with mothers with the same problems, with the same fears every day, and triggering our own fears and our own insecurities. We were able to live a normal life, even though it was not a normal life. They continue to do this. This is also very good for anonymity, because everybody, if you see these houses, all type of generations go out and get in. For all the generations, they didn't have to learn anything. They were there to provide counsel, to provide just a chat over a coffee, to cook together, to help the kids when their mothers were not able. This is an organization here in Brussels, and it's a little bit difficult for the administrative part. They tell us, but they cannot do it in any different way. So maybe for us, the tools are there. I think, of course, there are other things that maybe digitalisation or so, but for us, yeah.
Voilà. Pour répondre à votre question, dès le plus jeune âge, notamment via le programme éducatif français, les écoles, les collèges, les lycées, donc le primaire et le secondaire, sont ouverts à toutes les générations, et en fonction des compétences des uns et des autres, on va apprendre des aînés, mais les aînés vont apprendre aux jeunes aussi. On va parler de parcours de vie, de parcours professionnel, et puis il va y avoir des ateliers pédagogiques dans tous les domaines. Et en fonction des compétences, on va favoriser la transmission et le partage de savoir, de valeurs et de culture. Donc des ateliers où il y a des témoins de guerre qui viennent témoigner devant les élèves pour partager leur parcours de vie, des entrepreneurs qui viennent témoigner auprès d'élèves pour travailler sur leur parcours professionnel, des jeunes qui vont apprendre aux aînés à utiliser une tablette numérique, à utiliser les outils informatiques. Donc l'idée, c'est vraiment de favoriser le dialogue et les échanges et les apprentissages, de favoriser les apprentissages entre générations.
I'm very happy we've got a few minutes for the next questions. You must be interesting panel. So, please.
Yes, I have a question for Moira Allen, as she is promoting the older adults' rights. And I would like to have your opinion on the word of fairness, because I'm very, very afraid of that word fairness. I think it's abused. People are using the word fairness to take away rights from older people, to take away advantages, to take away income, saying older people are a burden and a cost for society. So let's take some of the advantages, some of their income, some of their rights, and give it to the younger generation. I think that's fundamentally different of solidarity. Solidarity is caring for each other and is helping each other. The strong have to help the weak. The older can help the young and vice versa. The rich can help the poor, and everybody can have a problem in their life, a disaster, a disease, or I don't know, loss of job, and go from rich to poor or from strong to weak. So everybody needs solidarity. So I want to replace the idea of fairness by solidarity, because solidarity guarantees that everybody has a secure life and a good life from the cradle to the grave. And that is solidarity, and that is our social system in Europe.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Professor Gamma to reply to that, because for me, she really just underlined the importance of that. Solidarity enables policy to be fair. Would you like to say some more? That's a very important point.
Yes, I think you just really came to the same conclusion as me there. I think the difficulty is that point that I made during my address about the worry that a lot of mainstream political parties have about the threat of the extreme right, and that what they're doing, it's happening all over Europe, is that they're trying to come up with policies that appeal to voters that they think like that approach. And therefore, they're starting to frame things as we will be fair to younger generations by doing this. But what they're missing is, it's fine to have the aim of being fair, I think, but you must not throw out solidarity, because it's the solidarity that underpins everything that we have. It is the belief that you will be cared for no matter what happens that provides you with the motivation to pay those taxes and social insurance and things that underpin the whole system. So if we start to remove that, we will unpick the system. So that is what I would say. Yeah.
Someone else who asking?
Thank you very much. Je vais parler en français puisque la question s'adresse, Michel Le Goff, à la représentante française de l'éducation nationale. C'est vrai que je remercie tous les participants pour tout ce qui nous a été apporté ce matin lors de vos interventions, monsieur, mesdames. Mais vous, représentante de l'éducation nationale française, je voudrais savoir où cette expérimentation qui me paraît magnifique dans vos propos, mais où ça se passe bien, je voudrais le savoir sur l'ensemble de notre territoire national, parce que la France ne se résume pas qu'à Paris. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner des informations où il y a eu tant de succès, étant donné que moi, j'habite tout bêtement en Bourgogne-Franche-Comté et je n'ai jamais entendu parler de ce magnifique projet et je souhaite effectivement que vous puissiez non seulement le porter au niveau de l'Europe, mais au niveau de notre pays, puisque vous êtes représentante française comme moi. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, comme je vous le disais, ce programme, ça fait 25 ans que je le travaille et il est développé dans plus de 80 départements avec formation de formateurs, formation des équipes éducatives. Et donc, il est dans 80 départements. Vous avez en Bourgogne, à Dijon, notamment dans l'Académie de Dijon, de nombreux projets intergénérationnels qui sont présentés, développés dans les écoles, collèges et lycées. Vous tapez sur Google Intergénération, ministère de l'Éducation nationale. Également intergénération, alors je parle de l'Académie de Paris parce que c'est mon terrain d'expérimentation depuis 25 ans, mais ensuite c'est diffusé depuis 2013. Le ministre de l'Éducation nationale, les ministres diffusent à tous les recteurs des académies ce programme qui est porté maintenant officiellement par toutes les académies françaises et l'Académie de Paris, toujours le terrain d'expérimentation pour cette innovation. Voilà, donc vous tapez Intergénération ministère de l'Éducation nationale France et Intergénération Académie de Paris et vous verrez un petit peu tout ce qui se passe en termes de projets éducatifs intergénérationnels qui sont développés voilà, depuis plus de 25 ans et qui s'adaptent en fonction, bien sûr, sont réactualisés en fonction des priorités chaque année, académiques, ministérielles, et puis en fonction aussi des priorités européennes, bien sûr aussi. Nous avons créé d'ailleurs un colloque européen. Hein. Le 30 avril, la Commission européenne était présente, un colloque européen sur l'intergénérationnel à la Sorbonne pour justement valoriser tout ce programme français et donner la parole aussi à des chercheurs nationaux et européens sur justement l'intergénérationnel dans l'éducation, en neurosciences, intelligence artificielle, histoire, mémoire et patrimoine, développement durable. Donc voilà, ça touche vraiment tous les domaines et c'est un vrai sujet de société. On développe dès le plus jeune âge ce sujet pour favoriser le respect, la solidarité intergénérationnelle, la transmission et le partage entre générations.
Thank you very much. To sum up our meeting, it's not too easy to say in a few words. In my opinion, the values are very important with intergenerational our job and cooperation, co-creation, co-education from each other. Just want to thank you, our panelists, for interesting and important presentation. Don't be afraid to applause, please. And I am announcing the coffee break to 11:05. Thank you.
Come now. Welcome back, everyone. No. Welcome back. And I hope you had a nice coffee break. And so a lot of intensive discussions. My name is Maria Petkova. I here represent Older Women's Network Europe. And I'm also Vice President of Age Platform Europe. And allow me to start with a quote by Oscar Wilde. Once he has said, "I'm not young enough to have all the answers." And today, because we're looking for answers, all of us together, and we really want to have answers to some of the questions that we're faced in this, fastly changing world and fastly changing societies. And I would suggest that, we start with a video with testimonies from 3 people because, we have people from different generations. Some are younger, some are older. So collectively, we could really have more answers. And we're going to have Lizzie Brizuela, who is founder and managing director at the Web Bund. We have Angelica Barr, who's project participant in the Das Halal project. We have Dr. Varsha Shivakumar from the same project, who's a participant. Please.
Hi, my name is Lizzie Brizuela, and I am the founder of the non-profit organization The Bund and the social project Das Hallo Project. We bring together German elderly and foreigners in order to promote the intercultural and intergenerational exchange and combat the loneliness of both groups.
So, hello everyone, I am Varsha Shivakumar. I come from India. I moved to Germany in September 2024. I am a doctor by profession, and language is very important for me to be working here in Germany. So the main goal of joining Hello Project activities was to make connections and learn more about the elderly who are Germans, and also to improve my language.
Hello, my name is Angelika Bier. I was born in Hamburg, studied there pedagogic and contemporary history. I went abroad for 8 years, earned my money as an instructor, and coming back, I trained young managers for international companies. With 63, I retired. I didn't feel ready for the sofa, so I was looking for activities for a job on a voluntary basis.
I come from Argentina, and I moved to Germany back in 2013. For me, at the beginning, it was very hard to learn the language, practice it, meet German people and integrate, but also find a job. Then I realized I was not alone. So for so many foreigners in Germany, it is hard to really practice the language and integrate. From the other side, I saw a lot of elderly in Munich. And then I got this idea, why we don't bring these elderly together with foreigners like me that we want to practice German, meet German people, and integrate. The elderly get a chance to learn about other cultures, other generations. They help us, and they also feel less lonely. Like a win-win situation for both groups.
Through the course of participating in various events, I have found that the elderly are really wonderful at sharing their life experiences with us who are still just learning about life. Personally, it has helped me learn Germans as people themselves, and also to see how sweet the elderly can be when you get to know them up close.
Being a senior, an elderly person, I profit of the company with young people because at least I can feel young in mind. And I hope that the other side, the young people, can profit a little bit of my former professional background and my life experience.
So through Hello Project, I have learned that something we call generational gap is always a myth. The elderly I have met so far have been really sweet, really helpful, and very friendly. I think such projects where there is an intergenerational exchange of ideas should be more in Europe.
All these activities helped me to get to know so many nice, intelligent young migrants from all over the world. It is a chance to establish relationship interculturally and intergenerationally.
Now it has been 7 years and we have been having like over 3,000 attendees over 70 different countries. We are still here bringing happiness to our participants and building bridges between cultures and generations.
As you know, there is this European Day of Solidarity Between Generations, which is the 29th of April. And I'll start with a short personal story. Years ago, in my country, I organized a public discussion to mark this day because we all share world and life, and we share families and homes, we share the streets, we share office spaces, we share cultural spaces. So for this discussion, we had leading professionals from different fields, and now we had a university professor and an artist and a journalist and other professionals. And, we had a simple question, which was somehow answered here. And the question was, what have you learned from other generations in your professional life? And it was extremely interesting, to hear the different views and memories of people from different generations. And they were supposed to give this answer, what have they learned from someone who's older and someone who's younger than them. So we had a discussion, and by the end of the discussion, a colleague of mine, and she's a researcher in sociology at the Sofia University, she came to me and said, there's a lot of talk about sustainable development. And basically for years I've been thinking, what exactly sustainable development is. And now she said, listening to those people, I realized what sustainable development is. And this is this shared collective knowledge and passing experience from person to person. And it's going on and on and on. So she said, thank you very much for clearing this up. Now I think, we're going to see another video. We done? And in this video, we have a short message from two members of the European Parliament. These are Indauer Mendia from the group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. And she's from Spain, and also the Polish member of the Parliament, Michał Szczerba, from the group of the European People's Party.
Good morning. I'm Idoia Mendia, member of the European Parliament from the S&D Group and member of the Employment and Social Affairs Committee. And I would like to sincerely thank to AIDS Platform Europe for inviting me to take part in your annual conference. I regret that I cannot be with you in person today, as I'm currently in Strasbourg for the European Parliament's plenary session. Our societies are undergoing major changes. By 2050, nearly 30% of the European population will be aged 65 or older. This shift brings new challenges for our labour markets, pension systems, and career paths, systems that were not designed for such an aging population. At the same time, younger generations are entering the workforce with different expectations. They value flexibility, work-life balance, and purpose. Adding to this, the housing crisis is affecting all generations. Rising rents, speculation, and a lack of public housing are forcing people, young and old, to leave their communities. Older people often do not have access to suitable housing, which isolates them and limits their independence. And young people do not have access to affordable housing. If we do not act, these social and economic gaps between generations will continue to grow. That is why intergenerational solidarity and fairness is more important than ever. To face these challenges, we need a truly intergenerational approach. In employment, we must fight age discrimination and make sure that older workers can remain active if they choose to, while also creating opportunities with quality jobs for young people starting their careers. Lifelong learning, early retraining, and reskilling must become the norm to ensure everyone can adapt and thrive in a changing labor market. On housing, we must explore new models like intergenerational living that promote community, fight loneliness, and allow everyone to live in dignity. Affordable, with quality housing that fits people's needs, no matter the age, is essential. We must also strengthen and better fund our public services, especially care systems. Young families need access to affordable, high-quality childcare. Older people must have access to professional, respectful care that supports their autonomy and participation in society.
Good morning. I'm Michał Szczerba, member of the European Parliament. I'm from the EPP group. I'm from Poland, and I'm also co-chair of interest group Europe for All Ages. Thank you to Age Platform Europe for inviting me to speak at this important conference. I regret I cannot be with you in person, but I'm proud to contribute to this essential conversation. Europe's population is aging. By 2050, almost a third of EU citizens will be over 65. This change affects everything: how we work, how we live, and how we care for each other. Aging is a challenge, it's a transformation. Intergenerational fairness is key to turning that transformation into positive change. In my work, I've been involved with third age universities and senior organizations in Poland. In Poland, we have 700 universities for senior citizens. I've seen how senior citizens continue to give a lot to our societies through learning, mentoring, volunteering. They are a source of strength, knowledge, and care. At the same time, they face challenges from different forms of being excluded in the workplace, to loneliness and poor access to care. Young people, too, are under pressure with housing costs, job insecurity, and digital barriers. This is why we need policies that connect, not divide, generations. We need better support for older workers to stay active, good jobs for young people, affordable, accessible housing for all, public services that work across ages, and digital tools that include, not exclude. The silver economy is a part of the answer. Health technologies, smart housing, age-friendly services, this can drive growth and create jobs, especially when shaped by intergenerational thinking. And with the Polish presidency, putting aging, security, and the silver transformation high on the EU agenda, we have a real opportunity to make this a European priority.
So, what is my wish for the upcoming strategy on intergenerational fairness? First, I hope it puts solidarity between generations at its heart. We need a vision that connects people of all ages, one that encourages learning from each other and working together, not one that sets generations against each other. Second, I hope it follows a rights-based approach. Everyone, no matter their age, should have access to quality healthcare, good housing, decent work, and the ability to participate in society both online and offline. And third, I hope this strategy leads to real change. We need a strong commitment from the European Commission and from Member States. This is our chance to put in place forward-looking, progressive policies that help us adapt to demographic change and to see this change not as a burden, but as an opportunity. An opportunity for innovation, new jobs, and a more inclusive and competitive Europe. And finally, I hope this strategy truly lives up to its name. It must be intergenerational in both spirit and content, not just focuses on young people, but also responding to the hopes and needs of older citizens. Their contributions must be recognized and valued. Thank you once again, and I wish you all a successful annual conference.
When I hope from strategy on intergenerational fairness. That is focused on what people really need. Dignity at every age, equal access to services, and policies that support connection and contribution across generations. Solidarity between generations is not a nice idea. It's a necessity. Let's work together for Europe, where no one is left behind, no matter their age. Thank you, and I wish you a great conference.
So we just heard that, we want no one to be left behind. And as I said earlier, it's a shared world. A lot of us and a lot of speakers today spoke about change. And there's a change that is happening and makes us uncertain, sometimes even afraid, but there are also changes that we fight for and we want to bring some change. So change is not inevitably a bad thing. It's survival, but it's also development. And in this session, we're going to try to speak and find answers to one of the changes that we want, and that is a change in stereotypes, change in the way we see aging. And just a few days ago, before coming to Louvain, I spoke with a friend of mine. I said, I'm going to Louvain, and there's this conference. And he said, he's a musician. And he said, what is aging? So I tried to explain what aging is. And he said, oh, I know. For years, I have been taught, you're too young for this. You're too young. We'll come to you later. And then he said, a few years ago, they started to tell me, you're too old. So I know what aging is. And what I mean is, even if we don't know the meaning of the term aging, most of us were faced with aging at the different stages of our lives. It has so many different ways, and it's about how we think, it's about how we feel, and it's about how we act. And obviously this is changing, with our age. But this is something that, we need to find answers, to see what is it, how do we feel? What is the way to overcome this, or maybe to face our aging? And to have the answers to those questions, we have an interesting panel with the people sitting next to me. So we have Alice Latta, who is a project manager of Antrange. And this is an organization which is also a member of Age Platform. We have Claire Champeux, who is a senior policy officer at Eurocaris, very significant and important partner. We have Arnstein Arsve, who's a professor in demography, and who's also a leader of the Futures Project. You're very welcome, all of you. And let's try to find the answers to the questions that all of us, here we have. So maybe, Mrs. Latta, we could start with asking you, tell us about your experience. Tell us about the lessons learned from your organization. How is it happening?
How is it happening in practice? Well, I will start with something a little bit personal. So thank you so much for inviting me here. I find it extremely enriching, and I'm very impressed by all the members who already spoke and the people who are with me on the panel. So my name is Alice Latta. I've been working for over 20 years for a project that's called Mémoire Vive. It's an audiovisual project that collects life stories of people over 80. My workplace is a home help service in Brussels that tries to keep people autonomously so that they can stay at home as long as possible. I do portrait and I get to talk, to listen and to exchange with people twice my age. In the last 20 years, I had 3 children, 2 divorces, illness, happiness, COVID, witnessed environmental change, war, society that struggles to keep up with values that seem to be deeply enrooted in our European democracies. Oftentimes, especially in more difficult moments or doubt or anxieties, memories of past conversations, sometimes just one sentence, sometimes a whole testimony, pop up in my mind to put things in perspective. This group of older ladies I got to meet, Francine, 97, former yoga teacher who taught me a breathing exercise. Colette, 86, who still remembers her fight for her first own bank account. Bea, who thought that you get pregnant by kissing someone. Tales about the time of occupation, war, courage, resistance, immense suffering, and sometimes cowardness. Observations of changes in societies, comments from abroad, people who were talking or a little bit surprised about our care system, etc., etc. These stories and experiences that they shared with me nourish and help me to face challenges life brings along. And I'm very grateful for the beautiful people I met, even though I don't agree with every single one of their visions or opinions, but our encounters shaped me. Not everyone gets that chance. The gap between generations grows bigger, and occasions to meet another age group get fewer. Why? Well, one of the reasons is fear of the unknown based on stereotypes, ageism. So today I'm going to speak about some initiatives that we take at Entrage, my other workplace. Next one, next slide, please. Next one. And so, yes, yeah. Yeah, no, yes. Yeah, it's a video animated, so next one, and then you will see some, it's okay, you can just stay there. So this is just to keep in mind, it's a quick exercise, you will just see all these stereotypes, and of course I'm sure you know immediately to which age group they belong. Because stereotypes, they concern us all, we all have them in our minds. Next one. Well, I guess everyone knows the report from the WHO. It's very interesting because the WHO also pointed out, and it's an important term, the intersectionality that we face in ageism. That means that, of course, people from on 50 will experience ageism, but also young people, like you mentioned. But it doesn't affect us in the same way. There are and the more you accumulate, the more you have, basically, the higher you are at risk. So WHO also, next one, pointed out actions that can help to combat ageism, policy and law, educational activities, and intergenerational interventions. Next one. And so at Entrage, well, we work on the 3 levels. We have awareness rising actions like the Intergenerational Film Festival, the Intergenerational Week. We also have a network, it's the RIBF. It's a network of members that all work in intergenerational activities. We have a documentation center, we do workshops with citizens in continuing education, and we produce educational tools about intergenerational relations. Here it's a video that actually is about the mechanism that leads to ageism that you can see on YouTube. Next one. We also published a memorandum for municipalities trying to commit them to engage into an intergenerational engagement. We did this just before the elections here in Belgium, together with our partners from the network. Next one. This is a campaign, so you can see stereotypes that you just saw in the first slides as well. Jean-Jacques Armieux, someone we appreciate a lot, and he says, intergenerational relations concern generations whose relationships go beyond mere co-presence. Next one. That might seem obvious, but it's not always the case, because sometimes people say putting up intergenerational activities, it's enough to put people of different age groups in the same space and then let the magic happen, but it's not how it works, unfortunately. Intergenerational activities and encounters have to be based on reciprocity. Transmission, helping each other out, sharing stories and experiences, experimenting different roles. Early on, someone was talking about teaching and learning, and this is exactly it, exchanging roles. So yeah, Belgium is a very innovative sector. We have a lot of actions. And so we do this intergenerational week. I only have 1 minute left, I think. So it's you can take a look at our website. So we invite people to write in their intergenerational activities in April, of course, around the 29th of April. Courage is a way of being in the world of tomorrow before it even exists, says Cynthia Fleury, a French philosopher. And I think the intergenerational approach is not a trend. It's a fundamental necessity for building a more cohesive, inclusive, healthy society. By fostering connections and collaborations across generations, we can address some of the most pressing challenges of our times for a more vibrant future for all. Thank you.
I thank you because, you mentioned really important things, for all of us. And one of the things you said is certain things, at first sight, were quite, self-understandable, it's clear. But it's not so simple, because coexistence is not, mutual connection and true human connection. And that's important for all of us to remember. Let me now invite Claire Champagne. Tell us about, the work of your carers. Do you see ageism? How do you see it? What is happening? What is the experience of your colleagues and yourself?
Yeah, thank you. And first, let me say I'm truly delighted to be with you today. Thank you for the invitation. We are very proud to be able to consider Age Platform as a ally and friend with a track record of fruitful cooperation. I wanted to say also I very much relate to what Alice just said on a personal note. And truly this conversation that I was lucky to have the opportunity to have with different generation, older or younger generation of women, when you are in your midlife, raising children and running all the time and trapped into the materiality of life, I would say, that you really get supported by this generation who think differently and have time to think, because children, the younger generation sometimes and the older generation have the time to think about life that you don't get. I will speak about informal care because I'm representing here today the Eurocarers network, which is a network of research and grassroots organization working with and for informal carers across Europe in 27 countries with 77 members organization. Next slide. And when I say well, informal carers are all those people who provide care to on a voluntary basis, so meaning that it's not paid, it's not professional, to a relative, someone in their family or a friend or a neighbor or someone else, but it's not professional. And just to illustrate the pivotal role of informal care in Europe today, I think this picture speaks volumes. If we compare the number of informal carers who have been, approached, even if it's still underestimated because there's a lack of data and research. But if we compare this proxy of 44 million people to the 6.3 million people who are professional health and care worker, you already see the importance of informal care. Next slide. It has been proved that there's a huge economic value of informal care, which represents between 2.4 and 2.7 of the EU GDP, meaning that if we wanted to shift all the care that is provided informally in the formal care sector, we will need to more than double the cost, the price we pay. So there's no universal long-term care without informal carers. And next slide. But there's not only the economic value behind informal carers, there's a human value. Care is provided all through the life course by all generation. We know more or less that it's more women age around 50 who tend to provide informal care to their older parents, for example, but that's not the only reality. And you can see that the young generation starting at 15 and the oldest generation that we see, 75 plus, have also an important rate of people who are providing on a regular basis informal care on a long-term perspective to someone. Therefore, and this is the next slide, we consider that informal care is as such an expression of intergenerational solidarity towards parents, towards older neighbor, towards disabled children across the lifetime, and also intragenerational solidarity. And it is also providing a tool, a reality that contributes to fight ageism, because when you are building a care relationship, you tend to foster mutual respect, understanding, you break down misconception. You're also involved in something that highlights a shared human experience that reminds you that everyone, regardless of age, has something to offer. And also it's important to say that informal care is a key asset in personalized and respectful long-term care, because we want to move away from this top-down approach where long-term care is provided from a standardized way about what older or frail or disabled people are supposed to be needing, but to a way of providing care that is based on their preferences, wishes, life stories, histories, and preferably in the community and at home. And for this, you need to rely on informal carers. Next slide. This being said, we really want to highlight that providing informal care, while it can enrich you, fulfill you, it's also a difficulty in life, and it comes with a what we call a triple penalty on your health, your finance, your social life, and it's mainly invisible. But that's my, if we turn now to the EU policy making and what we expect from it, we were very happy to support the adoption of the care strategy, which, next slide, provide a lot of provision on long-term care and recognize the role of informal care. The weakness of it, it's not been binding. So we need to make sure that the ambition expressed at this time, the momentum around care is kept. So potentially at the occasion of this intergenerational strategy, we need to highlight the need to take care, informal care into account, because all the good things that can accompany informal care provision that contribute to solidarity and ageism need to be supported. Informal carers need to be supported, recognized, and valued. Next slide. And that's why we will invite you. We also have a call for a campaign day. It's for us, it's on the 6th of October, and we animate European Carers Day, where we want to highlight the role of informal carers. So please join us on that day. Thank you.
Thank you. I heard a very important thing from your presentation, and this is the fact that social care is not just a service, it's a relationship. Yeah. And this has to be the leading meaning when we talk about care and long-term care. And now let's invite Professor Arswe. And I have a question for you, which is there a link, and what is the link, and what is the relation between solidarity between generations and this kind of in a profound change in the demographic landscape of Europe, which is so much discussed in recent years? And maybe you could also tell us about this. I'm really curious to learn about what is called EU Index of Intergenerational Solidarity. How do we measure this?
Thank you very much. And before I start coming to that question, let me just say thank you for the invitation. In the sense that I should mention that we are running a big European project, which is called the Future RES, so Resilient Future for Europe. And we've been working with Age Platform, and it's been very, very useful and helpful for the project. So thank you for the invitation. And I'm particularly happy because intergenerational solidarity, fairness is so important. That's been mentioned also in the videos earlier. But what I'm going to talk about here today and answering to your question, I would also argue that perhaps we are not seeing the big challenges that lies ahead. So if I go to the next slide. Oh, that's too quick. So I'm a professor in demography. So I thought I started off showing some classical age pyramids. So this is Demography 101, of course. This is taken from Italy. So it's 1950, 2025 today, and then how it is going to be in 2100. Now, I want to make 2 points here. First is that our societies, our welfare states are very much built on or designed based on what you see back there in 1950. This has already been mentioned in some other talks. And then where we stand today, Italy, 2025, we see this major transformation going on. So this is what we tend to think about aging, no? So, you know, the bulge in the middle there, that's people like me. And I'm not very soon, but in sort of 15 years' time, I'm going to retire. But I also want to point out that for the very first time in humankind, we have a minority at the bottom, and those are young people. And this is important to keep in mind, because it was also mentioned here that young people are the ones who are least likely to vote. But now we got a sort of a double whammy, so to speak, because we also have very few of them. Now, these are young people who's going to shoulder the burden of large groups of older people who's going to go into retirement. The second point I want to make is that we are all going to end up, as you see on the right-hand side here. And if you do this for other European countries, you're going to see a very similar picture. And that is that the age pyramid that is not going to exist any longer. It's going to be a pole, an age pole, and that is hammering in the importance of this intergenerational solidarity, because we're going to live together, and we're going to live together for a long, long time in the future. So if I have the next slide. Now, it's also important that there is an inequality story in all of this. So what this is some graphs from scientific studies done. The one to the left there is from the United States, looking at different birth cohorts. And you see the life expectancy, the difference between those with higher education and low education. And you can see what's happened over time there. But the same thing going on in Europe. So this is the gap in life expectancy. And you see the huge difference with respect to high and low education. Now, this is a big challenge. And of course, it's been talked a lot about lifelong learning, education. And when you look at this picture, it just hammers in how incredibly important it is. So next slide, please. And it's serious. This is a simulation that we've done in-house of the sustainability of the pension system. And it's again in Italy. So I'm not Italian, as you understand, but I lived in Italy since 2007, and it's really the country I know the best. But if you look at the line of 1.0, that is almost at the bottom. Now, if you are at 1.0, the pension system is sustainable in the sense that you have equal amounts of contributions coming in to payments going out to pensions, right? So even today, we don't have, in Italy that is, a sustainable pension system. But then you go up into the future here, and you see that things are going to get a lot worse. And even if I start to play with certain policy interventions here, so for instance, on the right-hand side here, I'm basically reducing the percentage of NEETs by 30 percentage points. NEETs are not in employment, not in education, and not in training. So that helps a bit. It helps a bit. But no matter what kind of policies I introduce here, we are facing a bit of a difficult future. Now, things aren't quite as bad in other countries in Europe, but you see the same pattern. So next slide, please. So the second thing issue I wanted to talk about here, and this comes, so now I kind of set the stage, no? And here comes the more to the question that you asked. So what we have been working on, and also part of the 2 minutes there, okay. Also part of the intergenerational strategy that is being undertaken. Coming up with some kind of index for fairness is useful. Now, this is work in progress, and I'm also aware that looking at other indices that are being presented, it's very hard to agree on an index, and I'm sure that's going to be the case even here. So next slide, please. So this is an index with four different dimensions. And I'm going to run through, running out of time here, so I'm going to run through a few examples of what this looks like for different countries in Europe. So if I take the next slide, please. So this is economic fairness. So that's one of them. And the way to think about this is that if you are at 0, then it is fair, right? Okay. Then there is no difference between the younger or the old. If the bar points to the right, then it is pro the older part of the population. If it goes to the left, it is more leaning to the younger generation. And there are technical details here, but you know, I'm skipping those. So for instance, if you think about Italy here at the bottom, that is simply to say that it's leaning way more to the older generation. So next slide, please. This is accessibility to public goods. And again, the one that is really coming in as fair is basically Cyprus, Lithuania, Austria, to some extent also Croatia. And down at the bottom, you have bottom not in the sense of negative, right? But Belgium, Germany is leaning more to the right, i.e. pro the older generation. Okay, and next slide. This is relational equality. So to what extent you are having relations with different people in society. And here you see that there is always a leaning to the young. It is kind of saying that the young people are basically having more social relations. And I'm running a bit out of time here. So if you could go to the next one, and next one, and next one. And this is the average of all of them, okay? And I'm going to, this is my last slide, and I just wanted to wrap up and say, don't take this sort of index as something set in stone here. This is work in progress. We are using various kind of data sources, so European Social Survey, the EU SILC, and so on. But I should mention that as part of the intergenerational strategy that's been worked on, JRC is also contributing to think about these indices. Now, final word from me. There was this issue about solidarity as opposed to fairness. Now, this is our version of an index of fairness. And I certainly don't disagree that it would be better to have an index of solidarity. The problem is, from a number cruncher person, it is way more difficult to measure it. So for the time being, at least, this is what we got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. Of course, I have some questions, but I'll give priority to the audience. So, any questions or comments? Claude.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your interventions. The future is going to be. It's going to be what we do. Things. The population is aging. Population is a key issue. But can adapt to population. We
Your mic doesn't work.
Sorry. I don't know.
Take it like that.
Okay, so sorry about that. Do you hear me now? I hope you were hearing me to some extent previously, but okay. So I was just, should I start again? Well, I mean, the idea was very simple. It's about the future, how the future is going to be. The future is going to be what we do, what we intend to do, how do we do it. It's our resilience, it's our way of thinking the future. We need imagination and creativity. Things are going to change because population is a key issue. Population is changing, so we have got to change as well.
Thank you, Claude.
Thank you. Oui. Thank you for the presentations, which were very interesting. I have different comments or questions. The first does refer to the institutional representatives. They are not here, but I wanted to comment that we listen always nice and shareable words, but the problem is that we need to understand how they think to address the problem and with which resources. We must be very clear and precise, because it's not exactly as my colleague was saying, it's not a problem of destiny, it's a problem of choices. So based on what? The second remark about the practices. My organization is the Italian Pensioners Union, and before the pandemic, we have begun to agree some protocol with the organizations representing the university students. So you come from the university, and indeed we had a protocol which was signed at the end of 2019 and renewed in 2024, on which on eight fields of action. One of these, for instance, was based on a questionnaire amongst 30,000 students on mental health, and it went to a proposal of law on this and on the psychological distress, based on the intergenerational approach exactly. So again, to push political action. So it is not approved, it's something that allows us to push. Last point is that on the carers, which is a very sensitive issue for all the Italian families, very sensitive, because we need carers that are not qualified, but there are not also unqualified carers in Italy. And this is a tragedy in most of the Italian families. But rather than informal, we need contracts with rights, with decent wages agreed by national collective agreement, with the rights on whatever is related to the holidays, the maternity, and so on. So, and at the opposite, this gap creates a mass of precariousness and of exploitation. This is really a very important aspect for all of us in Italy, but in Europe as well, as this percentage is increasing almost everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say a word about this, what you just raised about informal carers. 2 points. First, I was speaking about family carers. So, but I think you refer to people working without contracts, especially migrant carers who work, yeah. But what I want to say is that Eurocarers, as an organization of informal family, more or less carers, is also very concerned with this reality that is much spreading across Europe, that we rely on migrant workers to provide care at home with a lack of regulation and fairness. And it's really increasing, and our campaign this year will be about that. We are just preparing the material, so.
Yeah, I have also a quick response. I think it's, given how things operate here and the projections, I think what you are pointing out is crucially important. I should add here, I'm Norwegian. I have my mother in an institution in Norway. My wife is Italian. Her parents are at home with badante 24 hours. And so, you know, the setting is very, very different. But the key worry in all of this is that you have a lot of carers. They are, in the majority, women. And they are not actually contributing to any pension. And what tends to happen here is that as they are getting older and their parents are passing away, they are themselves coming to older age, and they really have very little contributions and very, very low pension. And this is touching exactly on what you are saying, and in the sense that they're, you know, of course, we don't have to put the Scandinavian style in a country like Italy, but you do need to sharpen up. We need to sharpen up these kind of regulations and the contracts and so on, because otherwise we basically have these enormous care contributions that are basically not accounted for in our economy.
I just wanted to add something. I found it interesting. It was mentioned as the approach with health. I think health is interesting as a notion to maybe try to force a little bit more the idea of finding laws, financing, seeing it in a holistic approach of a healthy society. What does it mean, a healthy society? And when you were talking about the first intervention of someone who said we have to be creative, we have to be innovative, and it's now. I'm just thinking about something that said, il faut penser plus tôt à plus tard. You have to think earlier about later. And this is exactly it. And I think we are there right now. We don't have the excuse anymore to say we don't live that long, because this is what happened before. Generations were surprised to live so long. Everyone was surprised. We don't have that excuse anymore. And I'm sure we don't want to exactly live like realities that we have today in some elderly homes. And we have to construct and build it now.
Other questions? Yes. I try to speak English. So it's a main point that we live longer, but in illness also. This is a big chance and also a big problem. And yes, with women, also in Italy, it's a big problem. You study, you have the chance to work, but you have to stop it when you have children and when you have to take care. So it is a big problem of poverty in old age since 50 years old, before getting old. And the other, it's the theme of the rights of women studying and have careers. It means careers, it doesn't matter if you have a manager or director. It means career, what you want to do, what you want to be. And caring is really a chance, but we have to defeminize, because there are a lot of men that cares. I do a job in enterprises, and many men come to me to get help to be caregivers. So that we have to change the history, not only talking about elderly, old people, okay? We have to change the way to speak about caregiving.
Yeah, thank you. Are there other questions?
There is one over there.
We speak a lot about solidarity, but I think we have to be aware that when it comes to solidarity between generations, we have a few different generations with different experience and different needs. And we have, a lot of different individuals in all those, generations. So it is kind of a theme, a topic for us to be discussed again and again and again, year after year. And I said that I'm not young enough to have the answers, but I'm old enough to remember that it was just before the economic crisis in 2008, 2010, when there was this, it was kind of a research, and there was a big document produced by some people who are, exploring the future and thinking about the future. And the document clearly said, care is a profession of the future. Because, with the technologies that we have, in a few years, a lot of, professions are going to be changed by machines, and everything is going to be done by machines. So people, will go to this profession of care. And it didn't happen at all. So what we see now, and I recognize, what you say, we don't have enough carers, professional carers in services. The ones we have are not properly prepared. They're not supported. They're not paid, So there's more and more, burden on the family. So the topic, that's my point, the topic of solidarity, the topic of fairness is becoming not just not just staying important, but is maybe becoming even more important for the future, because when things change, we have to change our perceptions. And if you think about Europe, like 50 years ago, a few generations would live in the same house. So there's the whole thing about solidarity, long-term care, care for children, you name it. And it has been, like naturally solved because people just live together. And that's why it is really important for us to keep this conversation in the coming years. And I thank you, the three of you, very much, for your contribution. It was really inspiring and really informative. And I thank you all for the attention and your questions. And now again, we have a short video with three participants. Okay. And we now have a board member of the European Grandparents for Climate. This is Goldella von Kirschbach. We have Mogens Jorgensen, who is a member of the Grandparents Climate Action in Denmark, and also the European Grandparents for Climate. And we have Agatha Meissner, who is the president of Generation Climate Europe.
Hi, everybody. My name is Agata Meissner. I come from Poland. I've been a climate justice activist since I was 16. I speak and write about the importance of intergenerational fairness in EU climate policy. And in the last 6 years, I've been building Generation Climate Europe, where we amplify the voices of young people all the way from the grassroots to EU decision-making processes.
Dr. Goldella von Kirschbach. I'm a German national, but I live in Vienna in Austria. I've been a climate activist for 5 years now, and I'm one of the two co-chairs of the European Grandparents for Climate.
My name is Mogens, and I'm 72 years old, Dane, active in the Danish climate movement and in the EGC, European Grandparents for Climate.
First of all, I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. I have taken responsibility for these people for all of my life. And I think I, like many other people, have been inspired by Fridays for Future. And we felt that we understood the despair of young people and have to support them in their justified fight for a livable planet.
After reading scientific papers about the future of climate change, the society that will be, and looking at my own grandchildren, I simply had to act, not because of myself, but regarding their future.
I think that solidarity among all people is vital to battle climate change. We all sail on the same boat through the universe, and damage to the boat anywhere makes everyone unsafe. And we are all deeply social beings, and we all go through the phases of childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age. So we should also consider these stages as shared experiences among us all.
The reality is that climate change doesn't care about age. It affects different generations, even if in different ways. So to me, intergenerational solidarity means recognizing that every generation has a role to play. So instead of focusing on the stereotypes and the assumptions that we have about each other, we need to create more spaces where we can genuinely collaborate as equals.
It is extremely important because a bunch of old people can do very little alone. And when we work for the younger generations, we have to cooperate with them, and they very likely want to work with us.
I would like to see a Europe in comprehensive solidarity. Solidarity between generations, between men and women, and different nationalities, cultures, and religions. We should consciously cherish our shared values, especially in this critical phase of world history.
I think that in an ideal world, a Europe that's truly rooted in intergenerational solidarity is Europe that doesn't just think about generations that are present here and does so in an equally and fair way, but also thinks about past and future generations. And that's the kind of thinking that I think is extremely absent from decision-making processes today.
If Europe fail to cooperate and push the fight for climate change, I don't have the words for it. So we have to cooperate more and more and carry the torch of scientific knowledge about climate change and what it is, and not nationalistic, populistic views. It won't help.
Stand together, look for the truth and for scientific facts. Be European first, and whatever nationality then.
Right. Thank you very. Yes, I will. I was going to invite, but I can see that our speakers are already taking the floor. So I have the pleasure to welcome actually four speakers for this final. Presidency, Madam Stravula Georgiou, Claudia Mahler, our strong ally from the United Nations independent expert on the enjoyment of human rights of older people, and last but not least, Dr. Heidrun Mollenkopf, President of Age Platform Europe. So we are switching directly to this final panel. We've got 45 minutes. It's foreseen that we will have more or less 8 minutes for each of you actually to mark the end of this very rich, I think it's almost a feeling that we have so many topics that have been actually addressed today, and actually probably for the moment we've got still more questions than answers, but I think that's quite normal. This is, let's say, an ongoing discussion. And as I said this morning with this conference, we would like to contribute, obviously, to the upcoming strategy on intergenerational fairness. But I would say that you will have the opportunity, the privilege to mark the end of the conference with maybe some final thoughts, recommendations. Usually when we close our conference, we want to have a panel which looks forward. So really to maybe within what's possible to come with a couple of concrete actually steps that we would like to take, and today specifically on how to use the potential of the strategy on intergenerational fairness, but also enlarging, taking this approach from the perspective of solidarity. It was touched upon different moments today. So I would like to proceed in the following way, that actually I will give you the floor one by one, but maybe, and I'm sure that you've got already your thoughts, recommendations, but I will ask you as well some introductory question on which, of course, please build on, respond if possible. But again, you've got each of you 8 minutes. So maybe, first of all, dear Desha, and I'm letting myself for this informal, let's say, way to address you. This is not by, how to say, it's not that I'm not respecting you. It's on the contrary. We with Desha, we were studying 25 years ago together. I think at that time, back in 1999, we didn't think that we were one day going actually to address the issue of intergenerational fairness and solidarity, but actually here we are, 25 later on, and I'm very happy that you are the messenger, right, from the Commissioner Micallef. You are a member of his cabinet. As we said this morning, for the first time ever, the commissioner in charge of this specific aspect of intergenerational fairness. So here, and you were almost for, let's say, half of our conference today, so you also listened to different contributions. Could you tell us more specifically, how do you believe that this strategy, which is on the way, could actually address different challenges that both young and old people actually are facing today? And more specifically, do you think, and if so, how this strategy could fight ageism, which is actually one of the key disruptors, right, of cohesion within our societies, of solidarity, intergenerational fairness. So more specifically on this challenge of ageism. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
So thank you so much, Maciek. Indeed, 25 years ago, we were together at the College of Europe, and who would have thought that 25 years later, we would be speaking about this together. But so indeed, I didn't follow half of the conference. I was here all the time. I only missed my own Director General speaking in the very beginning, but I found it a very enriching exchange for the Intergenerational Fairness Strategy that we are currently drafting and putting together under the leadership of Commissioner Micallef. Before answering your question about ageism, and I would just come back to one question that was there in the previous panel on fairness. So fairness and solidarity. Why are we using one term and not using the other? And to answer that, I would first come back to the testimony that was just before our panel that shows how much each generation is not only centered on their own preoccupations, but we actually worry, both older generation worries about their children and grandchildren as much as younger generation worries about their parents. So it's not only about being self-centered on their own interests, it's really this intergenerational aspect. So now why fairness is because we have this double mission. The first dimension is also looking into the future generations. So it's when we speak about fairness, it's also about considering all the generations of today as one generation in comparison to the generation of the future, which actually brings us as different generations together when we think about what we are leaving behind and what we are, how to make sure that we are not limiting the maneuvering space of future generations by our actions today. The second dimension of why fairness and not solidarity, while in the treaties it's really about solidarities, and the legal basis for the drafting of our strategy is Article 3.3. It's also the charter and so on. So why fairness? It's actually very simple. We wanted symmetry, and we didn't just want dependence. So we wanted more to empower different generations and to show how much we have the contribution of the young and the old. So it's really this symmetrical approach between generations. While when we speak about solidarity, it's more about dependency and vulnerability. And we didn't want, when we speak about a strategy on intergenerational fairness, to go into this dependency vulnerability dimension, but rather to go into empowerment. Now, when it comes to ageism, so basically, when we speak about intergenerational fairness, one of the key questions from the very beginning was how to define it. So what do we understand by intergenerational fairness? But in the very DNA of the drafting of this strategy is to make sure that we are combating ageism. So that's even part of the mission letter. The first element is the future generations. The second element is how to improve cooperation between generations. And the key element, how to improve it, is by naming and shaming basically ageism, because it limits access to opportunities, it limits access to services. So not doing it would actually be a failure in the drafting of the strategy. The other element is that ageism actually thrives in this separation. And if we improve this cooperation between generations, then we are actually going to address the key topic. And the last element about ageism is that it's not just unjust, it's also economically very wasteful. And in that context, if we look into how to make sure that we have the active aging, how to make sure that we have lifelong learning, the empowerment of young people, this is the way for Europe to unlock productivity, to unlock competitiveness. So this is the way we are seeing it from the perspective of drafting this strategy. But now the whole point of this strategy is not that this is only a strategy of Commissioner Micallef. Commissioner Micallef is the one leading the process, but the whole idea is to bring on board all different other commissioners with their own policies and to explain to them and to convince them how beneficial for their own policies is to integrate in the development of the policy this dimension of intergenerational fairness, and how detrimental would it be if they don't do it. So what would be the cost of non-action, of not integrating intergenerational fairness in the development of the policy? Now, one element we were not really addressing today was this element of the future. So of the future generations. This is something that is very much part of the development of the strategy that we're currently building. And that's why sometimes you have this impression that we are favoring young people. It's actually, they are the closest ones to the future generations. We don't have the future generations speaking. The only ones we have and that are the closest to them are actually those young people. And I very much like the intervention by Arnie with from Bocconi University, because what we are witnessing today is that the young generation is actually becoming the biggest minority we're having. So we need somehow to find a way of empowering young people. But when we speak about fairness, the idea is not to empower them at the detriment of another generation. No, the whole objective is to make sure that we have an intergenerationally fair society. So that's why the purpose of the strategy is also to be the platform for other commissioners to roll on the platform of the strategy their own actions. And these actions could be action on combating age discrimination, could be an action that would be targeted towards the seniors. So the idea is also to have actions from, for example, if you take agriculture, to have from an agriculture commissioner an action on generational renewal in agriculture. Because if we integrate intergenerational fairness in the development of agriculture, we would have young people joining the sector, we would have generational renewal in agriculture. If we don't do it, what would be the cost of non-action? The cost of non-action is that we wouldn't have food production in Europe, we wouldn't have food security. So it really becomes existential. And the reason why I'm mentioning agriculture is that normally when we speak about intergenerational fairness, everybody thinks about climate, because that's the one that is intuitively coming to the mind of everyone. But actually it concerns every single policy we have. And just the last word from my side, the idea is that the strategy is not just a kind of narrative of wishful thinking. This is not what we want. We don't want to put together a communication with a nice narrative. The idea is really to come with tools, to come also with this intergenerational fairness index, where we are also held by the Bocconi University and Arnie and his team in building it, to come up with a basket of indicators to be able to measure this fairness that we have, or unfairness, and then to put together policies to calibrate our policies in such a way that we address the issues that we see. So, well, I'm happy to answer any further questions that you might have, but definitely the exchange today is infusing our thinking on how to develop the strategy, and the purpose is that everybody recognizes himself in this strategy that we're building, and that we are also building for the future. So this is also something that we shouldn't forget, because at the end, the strategy is becoming something like a sustainability strategy, and this has been mentioned also in one of the previous panels. It's becoming something like a consciousness of Europe, like a moral compass for our policies, because if we want our policies to be intergenerationally fair, what it means is that they need to be fit for the future, they need to cater for the needs of all generations, and it's actually a huge responsibility, but it's a very nice exercise that we hope we will be able to deliver, that I'm certain we will be able to deliver early next year. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Desha, for both. I think it was interesting, yes, this clarification from you on exactly what was in mind of the European Commission when emphasizing fairness rather than solidarity. I think that's part of this debate that we wanted to have with you. Also, indeed, this transversal actual relevance of this strategy for policies that we would not maybe naturally have in mind, like agriculture that you mentioned, and of course, the engagement on concrete steps in a coordinated way within the European Commission, including with this action to combat ageism. And that makes me a very smooth, I would say, transition to our next speaker, Claudia Mahler, as I said, independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons. You are our, I would say, long-standing supporter, ally. Here we mentioned already this morning that there is this additional development with this UN resolution to start drafting a legally binding instrument at the UN level. So I wanted to ask you, do you see specific or more concretely how this convention on the rights of older persons could actually benefit people of all ages? And also maybe an additional thought about what is the role from your perspective at the global level? How do you think that the EU could and what role should play in developing this upcoming UN convention?
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for the invitation. Unfortunately, what you set out in the beginning is that we could reflect and give recommendations and also answer your question is not bearable in 5 minutes or 8 minutes. So I would try to be very brief. I would try to be very brief and also reflect a little bit what was said before. So thank you also for mentioning the future generation, because I have a little bit a different perspective, as you can imagine, because for me, it's also the lifelong process, the future generations. So I also did a report on the future generations for the Pact of the Future, which makes a quite good argument, I think, that we also need to keep in mind that the youth of today are the older persons of tomorrow. And we will get more generations of older people, and it's more decades of older people with a huge diversity, which is not really was not as much mentioned today. So when we talk about the right to work, for example, you're already older in your 40s very often. You're almost not, you can almost not effectively enter the labor market in your 50s again if you're out of the workforce. After 60, it really comes very hard to be part of the labor market if there are no incentives and if there is no upskilling from the countries. So what we really see is that the policymakers are not taking this very much into consideration, what it means to be in these different parts of aging. And as I said before, it is a kind of approach for everybody. We are all aging from the beginning to the end. So from my perspective, what was said also before is that ageism and age discrimination are the major gaps in the current human rights framework, which is also visible when we are talking about the European Union policies and laws. We only tackle the issue on the workforce, on the labor market, but not in the other lived realities, which brings us to huge gaps when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to accessing services, when it comes to accessing housing. We have a lot of projects around in Europe of intergenerational housing, but these projects very often end. So they are pilot projects. There is no sustainability in this kind of policies. So what I see is that even though we know the demographic shift and the demographic change is here, first discussions I recall are more than 20 years ago. So there have been demographic policies in most of the European countries from, also 20 to 10 years ago. Nothing really changed when I checked the policies. There is almost no line ministries on the European level. So how do we want to see also the implementation of all the measures we are thinking now if there is no line ministry on the ground? Who should do the implementation? And this is something I see also at UN level, because I look on it from a global perspective. Sorry if I mention also this, but the world is aging as well. So the demographic shift is real. And because we talked about care and support before, there will be a huge demand on carers worldwide. It's not only Europe. And as we know, other countries are much more flexible and much more forward-looking. So it will be a demand to change also the policies in Europe to get more carers from the outside. And as we know, because of the demography, there will not be enough young workers to deal with the job, and it's not attractive. Who wants to become a care worker? It's really not attractive, and nobody really wants to do the job because it has no positive connotation, still now. We got a lot of clapping during the COVID crisis, but that was the end of the story. So nowadays, people don't get enough carers around the world. So what I also see in regard of the convention is that we get minimum standards worldwide, which can also inform the European Union. We saw this as well in the development of the CRPD, the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The European Union ratified it, is now a part of it, and the treaty had an impact on European level as well. So what I'm looking forward is that we get a strong convention or legally binding instrument, however you call it, which tackles all these different issues. And as I said before, for example, ageism and age discrimination, which is not the same thing, are not written down in one of the conventions. We don't have a dedicated article on age discrimination, which is why we have such a weak, very often very weak discrimination law on age in the national systems. So from my perspective, we can close the gaps, but we can also make it much more specific that it's really working for the governments, also for the European Union as a kind of strategic and legal guideline if we get this convention. And I would love to see that the European Union is participating in the development and in the drafting process, not only the European countries, but also the Commission as well, and also bring their ideas into the Convention for Solidarity and Fairness, because this will be tackled also in this kind of convention, what we have seen worldwide, also in other regional instruments. I think I'll stop here. Thank you so much, and I'm more than happy to be with you.
Thank you very much. So here, yes, we take again a very, I think, straightforward recommendation to close this existing gap with ageism and age discrimination, which actually are not covered by the current equality framework. Of course, here we do not have our interlocutors from the DG Justice. This is the Director General that Age works on, I would say, almost daily basis. This is also from where we receive the support for our activities. So this is something looking at the Commission. Of course, we understand it's and you said it, Desha, it's a question of coordination among different services. So yes, setting standards and for the European Union, and in a way, actually, this convention will address, as you said, we are talking about the older people of today, but of course, those who are actually coming as we saw it with the projections. So now continuing with I would say, yes, institutional side of our guests. Madam Stravola Georgiou, you represent actually the Cyprus presidency. It will be actually in the first half of 2026 that the Republic of Cyprus will hold the presidency of the Council of the European Union. It was already mentioned today earlier by the Polish MEP that yes, there is currently a focus of the presidency which will end in a couple of weeks. It's on silver transformations. The following Danish presidency will, among others, look as well in relation to aging to long-term care. But we would like to know, of course, you are part of this trio between Poland, Denmark, and Cyprus. So what are there already clear priorities in relation to aging and older people maybe equality in the program under the preparation by the Republic of Cyprus.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. When it was mentioned earlier today that 2012 was the European Year of Active Aging and Intergenerational Solidarity, it was the previous Cypriot presidency. So it comes back here in 2026. I am sure that I will take way more than I will give to today's conference with me back to Cyprus in view of the preparations for the upcoming presidency. Of course, one of the main goals is to ensure continuity in between the trio presidency members, Poland and Denmark. And this is a wider perspective, including the new action plan on the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights, the UN Poverty Strategy, and the EU Strategy on Intergenerational Fairness. Cyprus will also include in its priorities, in its program of work, the topic of strengthening long-term care and active aging, which will include policy discussions on the topic. And going also to the intergenerational aspect, we will also have among our priorities the protection and well-being of the child. So it has been very interesting to reflect today also not on this institutional approach we have, aging and children, but the intergenerational solidarity. And so as you've mentioned, the Polish presidency has prepared also a set of draft council conclusions on supporting older people in reaching their full potential in the labor market and in society, which is expected to be approved in the next couple of days at the next EBSCO Council, where they will also discuss the future of the directive on equal treatment. I am not in a position to say more, but we will see the result after the EBSCO Council. So coming back to the intergenerational aspect, I was reflecting today while listening to the interventions that at the national level as well, we should put more effort in creating more collaboration between our institutions, more coordination. We have included in our national strategy on active aging, which was adopted this year in Cyprus, as one of our strategic objectives, the intergenerational solidarity. So it's a way, it's important to recognize this as an important element in our active aging policies. And I will also close with saying that Cyprus is also a member of the UN Human Rights Council for 2025-2027. So it also further strengthens Cyprus' commitment to uphold rights and dignity of all individuals across generations, and addressing the protection gaps and socioeconomic challenges for older persons it's among the priorities of Cyprus as a member of the UN Human Rights Council.
Is it all? I think it's already, thank you very much, first of all, let's applaud
today's discussion is I think it will also be very important because now we enter the stage when we have set our priorities, we have set our general path, but we are working on defining all the exact, the way the topics will be addressed. And I believe today's discussion was very important in contributing also to what I will be taking back home in these discussions we're having about how to address these topics.
Thank you very much. And if I may then just add something, indeed, it's a suggestion. It's something that we at AGE, we've been already discussing with the Polish presidency, but also Danish. And now with you, you've got still 6 months to come with your program. In the past, there was another trio of the presidencies in the council, namely Germany, Portugal, and Slovenia, which had actually a joint program, kind of an ambition on aging. Of course, now we are already in the middle of this trio, but if the government of Cyprus would like to maybe mark the end of this trio by, let's say, joint declaration or a sort of a commitment specifically on aging policies and older people, this is something that we would, of course, support very strongly. You mentioned indeed, and we remember many of us participated actually at the last presidency of Cyprus. There was a conference ending in the European year on active aging and intergenerational solidarity, which, by the way, led us to remind it was AGE who actually launched at that time. Initially, this European year wanted to be officially just covering the aspect of active aging. And actually, it was the initiative of AGE at that time, together with our allies in the European Parliament. And then we convinced as well the European Commission that this it would be actually a lost opportunity if, when speaking about active aging, we would not actually address as well the potential what solidarity between generations can bring. So once again, thank you very much for your contribution. And then we hope that you've got also from our side some additional thoughts, suggestions for your government. Thank you very much. So now I'm turning, yes. Now I'm turning, last but not least, Dr. Heidrun Molenkopf. Heidrun, our president, Age Platform Europe. You've got the privilege to have the last, let's say, word, of course, then we will have maybe some questions, but still from us as AGE, we were at different occasions today insisting on the need actually to address ageism, to have more concretely this action plan on ageism, which could be part of the strategy on intergenerational fairness. So actually how you think that concretely this plan on ageism could serve actually as a tool to address, well, the structural roots of ageism.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address this question. Before I answer directly to this question, I would like to remind and reiterate some of the agreed preconditions. I think one of the preconditions we take for granted is that equality is a value for Europe, for the European Commissions, for the institutions, for the member states, and for all of us. Another given, I think, is that AGE platform is striving for a society for all ages, or has been striving for such a solidarity among generations for, I think, as long as I can remember, AGE is existing. A third aspect, which is clear, which has become clear in the presentations of today, is also that solidarity is a precondition for our society, of our living together, of cohesion, and for mutual support. All this is very positive. And it is also very positive to hear from the commissioners, from member states, from organizations, that they want to fight against ageism, that they want to create measures and strategies for intergenerational justice, for fairness, for solidarity. And the question came up again and again, how can we achieve these wonderful goals? And I see some fundamental barriers. And I think one of the main barriers is that we are living and experiencing a segregated society. We live in segregated communities, children together at school, young parents together in some clubs or so, young people in their own, they have their own organizations and their own parties where they meet and exchange their ideas. Adults are mostly engaged in their professional life, and older persons, either they are organized in seniors organizations or in charities, or are lonely, alone, left alone. So, but all groups of the population live in different perspectives. And what we heard today was this call for leave the silos, destroy the silos. And this means that we have to create more space for exchange of our experiences, of talking about our fears, of our fears for the future, of the future, but also about positive experiences. And this should not just be in these wonderful projects we heard about today, in these initiatives creating these places and these possibilities to come together, to talk together. This should be a fundamental, I don't know, directive maybe, to have everywhere in all villages, in all towns and cities and communities, these possibilities to come together and to exchange ideas, to learn from each other and to understand the others. And I think this would be the best way to create a common understanding and cohesion in society. And now, how can such a plan contribute? And I have taken some basic issues. I think the action plan, first of all, it must be grounded in human rights, in intersectionality. And this is another point we heard today. Aging young people are not closed groups. They are very much differentiated, and there are big, enormous differences within these groups. So this has to be taken into account. And yes, equality, fairness, and solidarity within and between generations. So such an action plan should address legal and policy gaps. It should promote a rights-based approach grounded in dignity, autonomy, and participation. It should improve disaggregated data collection, including by age and intersecting characteristics. We heard about this also this morning. Yeah. How important it is to give a basis for policy, for good policy, evidence-based decisions. It should tackle intersectional discrimination, especially against older women, older persons with disabilities, racialized older people and older LGBTIQ persons, but not just older people, but people of all ages. And it should embed age equality into the European Union's agenda on intergenerational fairness and social justice. So I think these would be the main aspects that should be included. And I would emphasize that we as Age, we really would like to contribute to achieve these goals and to contribute to such an action plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heidrun. I think the message is very clear with also concrete, let's say, suggestions and yes, to the Commission, to all the partners actually with whom we want to progress on equality across throughout life for all age groups with, as you said, Heidrun as well, the space for coexistence, cooperation and making our societies actually interconnected, whatever our age, background, or convictions are. I was just wondering, now we've got only 5 minutes, but if there are... No, but okay, so it will be not a round of maybe 10 questions, but we will take, can we agree that we will take 3 questions, or we've got 4 panel speakers, 4 questions, but short questions, not statements. You just address directly what you would like to ask if you address it to a concrete speaker. We don't take general statements. So I've got Jos, I've got Yes, Harit, I've got Giorgio, and I've got Ina. 4. So I think we can make it with these 4 actually questions. Go ahead.
Yes, I thank the Commission and the Council to be here. I have one important question. That's how will the organized civil society be a partner in the process? I will just add one sentence. When I look to the process till now, it's only individuals who can react. As older people, and the whole consultation is on internet, older people are not on internet. We can only react as a person, not as organization. I have a concrete question to the Council and the Commission. How organized civil society will be a part of the project? Thank you.
The second, yes, please go ahead.
I have a question, which is also a message. And I can't help it. I can't help it because we have talked yesterday already and also today how fairness is being proved by the European Commission with a number of deeds that are determined to work out worse for the Netherlands pensioners, for example. I'm from the Netherlands, where the Commission wants to jubilate a discussion about another pension system, which leaves the pensioners, the present pensioners, in the past 70 years, 25 to 40% lower purchasing power because of the changes that have been made and the system that's here. How can I say the European Commission wants to have a policy on fairness if that's so working out worse for the present pensioners? And that's, I'm a believer in Europe, but I've always a lot of problems explaining why it's important to Europe, because they just say, well, my pension goes down. My pension won't be raised. Pensions for the new generations will be raised. We give hundreds of billion euros were taken from the savings of the old pensioners and given to the young. How can that be fair?
Thank you very much. Clear question. Giorgio.
Grazie. Ringrazio la dirigenza dello staff di Age perché è una puntata veramente molto interessante. Ci metto un secondo, però devo dire prima che noi qui europei siamo molto fortunati.
Giorgio, per favore, perché non tutti hanno, penso, chi ha bisogno, no, who needs...
li guadagno 8 minuti qua. Non funziona. Ecco qua. Invito a venire in Italia così impara l'italiano. Abbiamo scombussolato l'assemblea. Gli italiani sono un po' così, fanno un po' di casino.
Siamo pronti.
Bene,
Prego.
grazie. No, volevo dire, mi ripeto che volevo ringraziare la dirigenza e lo staff di Age per la mattinata molto interessante e tutti i relatori, veramente complimenti. Io porto a casa tantissimo, ma stavo dicendo che noi qui oggi siamo la popolazione europea più fortunata da quando esiste il mondo. Abbiamo vissuto 80 anni di pace. Questa grande Europa è cresciuta, però non ci siamo interessati più di tanto alle varie evoluzioni tra i giovani, le donne e i senior. E qui adesso ne stiamo pagando veramente le conseguenze. Il mio intervento è legato soprattutto a un ragionamento
men, women, young people, elderly people, and now we pay the bill. We are paying the bill. So let's try to be more preventive. How to make sure that we're going to live longer? We are the first generation to live that long, to live that old. And we signed a European project, Sprint It, that we co-manage with 11 European countries. And we reached a series of conclusions in this project. And there are two important elements in the conclusions of this project. Autonomy, first, because the key word for elderly people remains autonomy. And to achieve autonomy of young people, you need food and movement. Why? Why are we that old in Italy? We are that old in Italy because there is the Mediterranean diet. So we eat better than the others. That helps a lot. My question. The five wealthiest people in Europe would like to make us eat processed food, processed produce. But we need to ask, there is intervention of Maciek. It's not a question, says Maciek. Yes, okay, indeed, it's not a question. It was not really a question, it was an intervention, that's it. Thank you a lot. I tried to make my point.
The mic goes to you. And this is the last question, and then we will try to respond if you manage. And I ask kindly our interpreters for this additional 5 minutes before we break for lunch.
Thank you, Maciek. I will be quick. Is the microphone working? Yeah. I have a question for Claudia. Given that we're here mainly civil society representatives, I would be interested to hear a little bit. No? Maybe no? Yeah? Interpreters, are you hearing? Yes? Okay. My question is if you can share some of your ideas about how civil society can participate in the upcoming process on the drafting of the convention. Thank you.
All right, 4 questions. I don't know whether all actually our guests have been, let's say, addressed. Ben, whether you will be able to respond to them, but I think certainly, Desha, you will be probably the first one.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. So very quickly through the question. The first one, Jos, about individuals contributing. You're only mentioning there the contributions through the citizens engagement platform. This is just one tiny part of the consultations that we are consulting with regard to the drafting of the Intergenerational Fairness Strategy. So indeed there, the citizens engagement platform, you need to individually log in and so on. But we are so open to all these different contributions. The EU Policy Lab is conducting these extensive consultations. On our side, on the level of the cabinet, we are also in bilateral contacts with different organizations, and we will be further having this European Citizens Panel. So I think this intergenerational fairness, there has never been in the history of the European Commission a more extensive consultation than this one, where we are not only speaking about individuals contributing, but really about all types of contributions. So Jos, you have already shared a number of contributions that we are taking into account, and I'm really inviting you here today again that if ever there is anything you believe should figure in this intergenerational fairness strategy, please do share it with us. So also with me by email or whatever, because what we want is that you recognize yourself in this strategy. That will be the ultimate success of the strategy, that you really recognize yourself. The second question on the pensions, here I'm afraid it's really not the competence of the union. So I will not enter into answering this. You will say that's the easiest answer, to say that's not our competence, but we really stick to this element. When we are speaking about pensions, we more venture in the area of flexible retirement patterns and so on. But when it comes to the systems as such, I'm not going to venture myself in there. And the last element, which was not really the question, but more a comment, I actually think that this healthy longevity, rather, we were speaking a lot about silver economy, silver society, but where the Commission, since the demography toolbox, we entered in the area more of longevity than silver dimension. And this silver economy, silver society, healthy longevity, because the purpose is not just to live longer, the purpose is to live longer in good health. And in that context, nutrition and all that will actually be part of this intergenerational fairness. What we want to have is also actions with regard to this healthy longevity and how to look into preventive dimension of health, because if we don't start working on health when we're young, it's too late to start when we're 70. I think those are all the questions that I could address at my level.
Yes, thank you very much. So I think, Claudia, you can actually jump on the last question, or anything you would like as well, maybe to react.
Thank you so much, Ina, also for asking this kind of question. What you can do is on 3 different levels. What I see, you can argue on your national level to get more civil society organizations into the loop, also from different aspects. For example, women's movement. They could also support all the women's issues in regard of the convention, but also have this kind of informational aspect on the national ground. Bring it up to the European Union as well, in regard to ask them to be part of the negotiations. As I said before, as we know, we always had one partner of the Commission in the open-ended working group on aging in New York. So we are really looking forward to get a new ally in this regard in the next steps in Geneva. And also what I also see is that we need a kind of movement. What we see is that older persons are still not loud enough. So we need more older generations to stand up for the rights and really make a paradigm shift, that you're rights holders and you want to get this kind of convention to be better supported from your governments and also from the UN. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. No, you say pass, or?
I will pass. I think, well, it's we will we can also have a discussion with each platform on as and of course, because this is also continuity, being here with people that work both at national level and European level, but also it's okay. But also, as for example, with Hadrian, we also work in the Standing Working Group on Aging of UNEC. So it is important to stress out that we need this continuity and this discussion and this cooperation between our institutions, the civil society, and
absolutely. So this cross, I would say, institutional and stakeholder cooperation. I think there is a burning yes. So
indeed, because we have the upcoming council. Well, not the upcoming, but the next council presidency as of January, when the intergenerational fairness will actually be presented. So it will be under your presidency. What on our side is very important is that we actually do not have a natural interlocutor in the council. So there is no council formation that can where our intergenerational fairness strategy can land. There is no working party in the council to discuss the potential conclusions on intergenerational fairness. There is no ministerial formation discussing on intergenerational fairness. So having your presidency, well, upcoming presidency present here, this probably helps in terms of preparing the ground to have a fertile ground in the council to discuss the strategy, to think about conclusions. And this also very much linked to what you said, Claudia, on we don't have ministers in charge of this, and we know the impact that demographic change is going to have, but we still lack interlocutors, both on institutional level, in the parliament and in the council, as much on the member states level, on the ministerial level. So super happy that your presidency is present here, because when we present the strategy, we really want to find the landing spot in the council to discuss this. Yeah. Before coming here, I was worried a little bit about, okay, intergenerational strategy. I am at the Deputy Minister of Social Welfare. And then I called the Minister of Education and I said, I think it's going to land in your ministry. So keep in mind that I am working on aging. So I'm the person to call when it lands in your ministry, I think. So yeah, I understand I had the same feeling about it, and it's more a bureaucratic way of thinking and administrative, but we also have to deal with this.
thank you very much.
Yes, so
the last word, yes.
Yeah, I feel a strong commitment from everybody here. And this gives me some hope that what we heard and experienced today, that it will continue, it will have a follow-up. And I think this is essential, that we don't just talk and exchange good ideas and tell us about stories we heard or we were involved in ourselves, but that it has an impact in reality, in real life, in legislation, in organizations, in management, and in real life of people of all ages.
Thank you very much. I think with these words, we can close the conference, the commitments on which we will work together. Thank you to all of you. First of all, to the speakers, to you, and I'm sorry for being maybe harsh in time management, but we already went beyond the agenda. But I wouldn't end this without saying a word of thank you to the whole team, but in particular to the two colleagues in the Secretariat, Apolline Parel and William Getty. They are the two who actually spent most time to prepare this conference, to have all those exciting, interesting panels, but also to have, as we did it for the first time, the contributions in the format of the videos. I think they brought additional, let's say, insight to our discussion. So to two of you, a big thank you and congratulations to all of us. Enjoy your lunch.